subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Room of the Hunter exam. The three pushed open the door and entered. Inside is a room. There is a table in the middle. Several chairs are scattered around. Richard stepped forward. This chair is still warm. It seems that someone has already arrived before we arrive. Suddenly, the ground shook. Richard looked towards the door. Then I saw a display above the door, and the display was a series of numbers. At the moment, this number is turning rapidly. This is not a room, but the elevator. Richard frowned slightly. The entrance is different from Gon's exam, but the elevator is the same. Gloria and Pensy leaned against the wall to stabilize their bodies. The elevator is falling fast. Finally, the elevator stopped. The door opens. A passage appeared in the sight of the three of them. Both Goliath and Pins looked at Richard. Richard stepped out. Gradually, some figures appeared. About 100 people. After seeing Richard and others, they all turned their gazes over and then withdrew. Richard's eyes also glanced around. Sudden, pupils shrink because Richard saw two acquaintances. One is Hisoka. The other is Ilmi, an Ilmi disguised as Gitaracker. What a coincidence. It turned out to be really this Hunter exam. Multiple entrances? Chapter 34, the upcoming exam. There are 2 Hunter exams that Hisoka took. In the first game, he was disqualified because he attacked the examiner. The second one is where Gon, Killua, Leorio, Kurapika are. And if IL was obsessed, it was obviously the second game. The rules of the exam will not change. Then this time, even Peng Si has the possibility of passing the exam. Richard glanced at Pence. With Peng Si's strength, the previous year's test would definitely not pass. But this year is different. For the last exam of the year, Netero has opened up a large number of places for unknown reasons. According to the rules, only one of the contestants who entered the final exam will not pass. In the plot, a little accident happened during the exam. Killua killed a contestant and was disqualified because of the excitement of Ilfin. But these 2 people did not pass the exam, and the others all pass. Hisoka also saw Richard but didn't care. Hisoka knew about Richard that Richard used the recorder in the match against Sudeso in the Sky Arena. Hisoka couldn't see through the thoughts of death hidden in the recorder. Therefore, judge Richard as an ordinary nun. Hisoka has no fighting interest in Richard. Let's go over there. Richard pointed to a corner. Gloria and Pence subconsciously followed behind Richard. Originally, Gloria's plan was to play the role of captain in the team. But the exam has not yet officially started, and there is one less member. And his performance was pretty bad. Gloria had realized that Richard was much stronger than he had imagined. A figure came towards the 3. Is middle-aged. He is not tall, even short, with a fake smile on his face. Hello, I haven't met you. Are you a new candidate taking the Hunter exam for the first time? You are, Gloria asked subconsciously. I'm Tampa. Tampa pointed to himself and said, Don't look at me like this. I'm an old candidate who has taken the Hunter exam 35 times. It's a little embarrassing, even though I failed every time. However, there is still experience. If you don't understand anything, you can ask me. By the way, do you want a drink? Richard gave Tampa a serious look. According to some information learned in previous lives, there are 2 opinions about Tampa. One is that Tampa can't be none, just an ordinary person with a little strength and bad taste. The second one is that Tampa is actually very strong, far surpassing Hisoka, a fan of IL, who participated in the Hunter exam just to choose the right seedlings, which may be related to the Dark Continent. Richard looked away. The second possibility is very low. After all, I can't see the breath of none from Tampa's body. Compared with other Nen people, my perception is much stronger. Unless Tampa is far stronger than Netero. Faced with the drink that Tampa handed over, Gloria would refuse without Richard reminding him. Gloria still has this experience. Thanks, but we brought water. That's it. Tampa's face showed a hint of disappointment, but he quickly restrained himself and said, Then let me tell you about a few people to pay attention to in this exam. First of all, it's the man with red hair. In last year's exam, This man was disqualified because he seriously injured the examiner. He only came this year. Otherwise, he would have obtained the hunter license last year, which is very dangerous. And that one, with needles all over his body, no human breath at all. It's terrifying. The three over there are three brothers, and they are very strong. Tampa said a lot, until a new student arrives. Tampa just stopped. Welcome to the new candidates. Gloria retracted her gaze and lowered her voice. Does this guy treat us as complete newcomers? It's impossible to be trusted with such an approach. The candidates who come here are all competitors. There must be something wrong with that drink. Richard glanced at Tampa's back. Don't care about him. We can just do our own thing. Gregory laughed suddenly. Someone has really been fooled. Richard looked over. Then I saw a young man with short white hair who took the drink from Tampa's hand. Without hesitation, he opened the drink and drank it. The smile on Tampa's face became more and more intense. We'll see in a moment what was going on in that Tampa's drink, Gloria said expectantly. But Richard knew that nothing would work. At this age, the white-haired boy who appeared in this hunter exam was only one person. That is Killua, the most valued genius of the Zoldyck family. Compared to Ilmi, Miji, Coluto, Silva, and Jino, I believe more in Killua's potential. Probably because of the hair color. Ilmi, Miji, Coluto all have black hair. Only Killua is an exception, inheriting the white hair of the Zoldyck family. Tampa's poison had no effect on Killua's constitution. Over time, more and more people. Crack! The door opened again. Three figures came out from inside. Leorio, Karapika, and J Freaks. Chapter 35, More Than Strong. Seeking evaluation tickets. Tampa put down Killua and greeted the three of them. A hunter exam worker handing out number plates. Tampa excitedly took out his drink. But, like the original, it failed. Kurapika has enough vigilance. Why was the Kaluta clan exterminated? Kurapika herself bears no small responsibility, because the seclusion place of the Kaluta people is very secret. Outsiders can't find it all. At that time, it was Kurapika and another partner who rescued a person, but only got a verbal promise from the person to keep the Kuruta tribe seclusion a secret, and then let this person go, so that the information of the Kaluta tribe will be leaked. Phantom Troop appears. Overnight, the Kaluta clan was wiped out. Only Kurapika escaped because of going out. For this incident, Kurapika not only has hatred for Phantom Troop, but also self-blame for herself. Since then, Kurapika, it has been hard to trust others. Gon was born with sensitivity in this regard, and felt that something was wrong with the drink, but he didn't think it was Tampa poisoning, but simply thought the drink was spoiled. Leorio, with some changes from the original. In the original book, Leorio had already taken a sip and only spit out the drink after being reminded by Gon. But now, Leorio, because he saw Richard. Bang! I didn't hold the drink in my hand. Fell to the ground. Richard noticed Leorio's gaze and nodded slightly. Leorio, have you met someone you know? That's it. Leorio recalled the scene and forced a smile. The situation at the time, for Leorio, was a psychological shadow. So weird. Even after that, Leorio deliberately learned something about Hunter. Because of Richard's reminder, Leorio wanted to get a hunter license. But among the information Leorio got, no one could have such a strange ability like Richard. Just play the clarinet. You can drive those people crazy. Self-mutilation, cannibalism. It's like witchcraft. Leorio was just a little scared at the time. And the more he learned, the stronger and stronger Leorio's fear of Richard became. Tampa glanced back. It's those three people. Like you, those three are newcomers. Tampa handed him another drink. The bottle of drink is gone, so don't let it. I'll give you another can. And at this moment, Gon's voice sounded, Mr. Tampa, your drink seems to have expired. Leorio withdrew his hand to take the drink. Tampa's face changed, showing an embarrassed expression. Did expire? Yes. I smelled it, and the smell is not right. I will not judge this wrong. I am sure. I'm so sorry. Killua noticed Gon and walked over involuntarily. Throughout the examination room, with so many people, Killua only saw Gon, who was about his age, and naturally interested. Killua understands hunter exams. So, know the difficulty of the hunter exam. Killua itself, after passing countless hard training, has the confidence to participate in the hunter exam. So Killua wondered what was Gon for. What was Gon's previous experience like? Any drink? Can you give me another bottle? Certainly, Tampa smiled. Gon also looked at Killua. Liurio said, "Little brother, this drink has expired. Do you still want to drink it?" Expired. Do not. Killua shook his head and said, "This drink only contains some laxatives, so it doesn't taste right, but this level of laxatives is useless to me." When Killua's words fell, all three of Gon looked at Tampa. Tampa gave an embarrassed look. "Ah, just kidding. Besides, this is equivalent to a test for you. If you can't even tell the difference, the difficulty of the hunter test will be much greater than this. I'm here for your own good." Tampa immediately changed the subject. "Let me introduce you to the candidates who need to pay attention in this exam." Tampa repeated what he said to the three Richards, with emphasis on Hisoka, Gitaraker, Il Fan. After finishing speaking, Tampa quickly backed away and returned to the crowd. "Liurio, won't you go and say hello to them?" Gon pointed in Richard's direction. Liurio shook his head. "Forget it. I only know one of them, and I don't know them very well." Suddenly, Liurio's expression turned serious. "The other two, I don't know. However, Gon, the man in the middle, is very strong and very dangerous. You must not conflict with him, even if you give up. Understand?" Kurapika was alert, but when Liurio said this, Gon became interested. "Is that person strong? Not just strong, but dangerous?" Liurio said, "I personally think he is more dangerous than what Tampa said about Hisoka and Gitaraker." Hearing Liurio say that, Killua couldn't help but look towards Richard. A burst of exclamation suddenly sounded from the crowd. Chapter 36. Glaya gave up in front of Hisoka. A candidate's arm shattered in plain sight. After that, the whole body. Suddenly, a vacuum circle appeared around Hisoka, and no one dared to approach. Not because the man died, but because the person died, they couldn't read it. Kurapika's expression became serious. "Liurio, do you still think that the person you know is more dangerous than Hisoka?" Liurio swallowed and thought about it. Then nodded. "Yes, I'm sure." There was a sound of footsteps. A man in a formal suit appeared in front of everyone. "Hello, everyone. I'm the examiner for the first exam of the Hunter exam, SATS. Now, I want to ask you a question. Do you really want to take this Hunter exam? And it is known that there will be a large number of deaths during the exam. Over the years, many candidates will die in the Hunter exam. Now you give up, it's still too late. As long as you turn around and walk towards the elevator, you can leave." But no one left. Those who can come here, even newcomers, are mentally prepared enough and have a certain confidence in their own strength. "Very well, since no one has left, I will take everyone to the first examination room now. Please follow me closely." Immediately, Sats turned around and walked toward the other end of the passage. The crowd followed behind Sats. A fat man holding a portable computer said, "It was exactly what I expected. The first test is to test endurance. As long as you can keep up with the examiner, you will pass the test. Before I came, I had already prepared enough physical reserves." Gradually, Sats increased his speed a little. The team of candidates is divided into three parts. The first group followed closely behind Satsu. The second batch has the largest number of people. The third batch had already fallen to the back of the team and was about to lose their hold. Some people's faces became ugly because, according to the situation they investigated, this endurance test should not have such a long distance. One candidate after another stopped. For Richard and Pence, it was easy, but Gloria was already a little bit exhausted, breathing heavily. How far? Richard didn't expect that Gloria's physical fitness would be so poor. "The information I got is not so far away." Gloria was a little desperate, not because the road is too long, but because there is no end in sight. "Do not know." Richard shook his head and said, "Only the examiner knows how long. However, it can be roughly speculated that the purpose of these levels is to screen personnel. Then, we can look at the number of eliminations. There are more than 400 candidates taking the exam. There are now dozens of them that have been completely left behind. Just hold on for a while. Maybe it's almost the same." Gloria nodded. However, when Glaya looked at the situation beside her, Gloria was even more desperate, because there is not much worse than him. Richard, I may not be able to hold on. I gave up on this exam. I passed the first exam so hard, and after that, I may fail even more. Forget it. Richard, Pence, come on. Gloria slowed down. Richard didn't expect Gloria to give up so decisively. However, this cannot be said to be an incorrect choice. The first level was barely passed, then the later levels were even more difficult. After all, there's only one person like Leorio. The first exam was tough. Basically the last place, but Leorio is improving very fast and keeps improving. In terms of magnitude, it is bigger than Gon and Kurapika. However, this has something to do with the lower base of Leorio itself. Going from 40 to 60 is definitely easier than going from 80 to 90. Pengsi, are you okay? Fine. Pensie's condition is a bit worse than Richard's, but better than most people. Richard glanced aside. Both Hisoka and Gitaraker were among the second group. In fact, their strength is stronger than the examiner. But at this time, it doesn't make sense to be in the limelight. It's hard for others to guess Hisoka's mind. And Ilmi just came for Killua. I cannot make it. Leorio gasped heavily. Then I'll take a step forward. Kurapika said, it is good. Tampa came to Leorio and sneered. Young man, give up. With your strength, it is impossible to pass. There's still a long, long way to go. Leorio gave Tampa a hard look. Tampa's strategy went awry. A person like Leorio can't stand the most powerful method. Tampa would have wanted to make Leorio despair. Unexpectedly, it also aroused Leorio's fighting spirit. A new force burst out from Leorio's body. Tampa's face darkened. Soon, however, Leorio couldn't hold on anymore. Tampa's stimulation is still not strong enough for Leorio. Breathing heavily, he carried the box. The whole person ran with all his strength in a very strange posture. Do you need help? Leorio looked to the side suddenly. Richard. No need. Leorio was taken aback. I can do it. Leorio's speed suddenly accelerated. Needless to say, what Tampa just said was just a small stimulus. Then Richard's words for Leorio are panic. Leorio was afraid that Richard took out his recorder. Chapter 37, you can see clearly, for collection, Richard shrugged. Originally, Richard was going to help Leorio. After all, Richard implicated Leorio when he was hunted down by gangsters. And even so, Leorio still didn't forget to bring out the medicine Richard was going to use. Possibly Leorio has various shortcomings. But as a doctor, Leorio is competent. Leorio's potential is once again stimulated, even more than Kurapika, who had already left first. This surprised Kurapika a little. Richard is back in the second echelon, tied with Pence. Watching Gon and Killua suddenly accelerate. Richard smiled. Young is good. Now, Richard, making decisions, will consider comprehensive interests more. Things like Gon and Killua, Richard doesn't do it anymore. Past this age, the surroundings were quiet. Only the sound of running and breathing remains. Most people don't have the extra strength. Satsu's speed was getting faster and faster, so that he gradually disappeared from everyone's sight. Only those in the first echelon can still see it. Finally, a tall step appeared. A ray of light poured down from above. Sat stopped. Gon, Killua, first tier. Second tier. Leorio fell behind again. Sats looked at the time. Time up. A stone door slowly fell. Wait a moment. Leorio gritted his teeth hard. At the critical moment, he rushed out from the gap in the stone gate. But the man behind was not so lucky and was blocked by Sherman. Only one step away from passing the border. Gon and Killua were both excited, and they saw the exam more as a game. Especially Killua. Killua didn't care that much about getting a hunter license. Killua was even happier, having made Gon as a friend. A peer who could be admired by Killua. Kurapika looked in Richard's direction, then looked back at Leorio, who was gasping for breath. Leorio, I think your judgment is wrong. You said that person is more dangerous, but even the first level, one person in their team was disqualified. Having teammates like that proves they're not strong. Leorio shook his head. You don't understand. You haven't seen it, so you don't know. Anyway, my suggestion is that if you can, it's best not to confront them. Otherwise, there will be no good results. Gon came over. Leorio, Karapika, what are you talking about? Karapika gestured to Richard's side. Killua glanced at it and said, I remember that there were 3 of them before. It was a temporary combination at first glance, so the strength of the team members is different, which is normal. Temporary combination? Karapika froze for a moment. Yes, it is obvious that the breath of those 3 people is completely different. Gon nodded beside him. Yes, I feel it too. Karapika's eyes flickered. Suts came to Cthulhu. And at this time, sudden, a middle-aged man came out from the side, looking seriously injured and dragging a monkey. Don't be deceived by him. This person is not a real examiner at all. He is a monster, a man-faced ape, and can change into a human. They attacked me. I'm the real examiner. If everyone follows him, he will bring everyone into their lair and eat everyone. The middle-aged man said, Everyone, come with me and kill this monster. Immediately, the students fell silent. Sats looked at the middle-aged calmly and did not speak. In other words, this is also a test. Can you judge the real, anthropomorphic ape and examiner? Leorio stood up. For this first test, Leorio was very dissatisfied and felt that it was meaningless. He simply exhausted one's physical strength and endurance to such an extent that he could not see any skills at all. So, subconsciously, Leorio was on the side of the newly emerged middle-aged. Richard looked in Hisoka's direction. If there is no change, then Hisoka should take action on Sats and Ape. Attack both at the same time. Sats took up Hisoka's attack. The human-faced ape did not, and was killed directly. Richard, what are we going to do? Pence asked. Need not. Richard shook his head and said, the correct way to do is not just to judge it, but to keep it secret without answering when it is judged. We don't need to say it. Why? Because candidates who can't even judge this are really not eligible to enter the next round, Richard said. And, in a sense, they and us are competitors, and by speaking out, it is equivalent to helping competitors and creating disadvantages for themselves. This is Richard's idea. The reason why he said it was that Richard was testing Pence. To get a clear idea of Pence's concept. In a team, the 3 views are the same is the most suitable. If they're different, conflicts can easily arise. Not just the team, but the couple as well. Some people seem to believe it or not, and stand on the middle-aged side. And at this time, Hisoka shot. The 2 cards flew out with lightning speed. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. You can see clearly. This proves that the gap between me and Hisoka is not that big. The amount of recitation is not as good as Hisoka. However, it is not without the power of a fight. Chapter 38. The ability of picture scrolls buffed. The middle-aged covered his throat and fell down. The figure gradually turned into a man-faced ape. Only after that did someone notice the card on the neck of the orang Astley. And in Sats's hand, a card also appeared. A lot of people realized what's going on. Most people didn't even notice Hisoka's move. Among all the candidates, only 3 mastered none. Hisoka, Ilmi, Richard. Sats looked at Hisoka. The one who attacked the examiner last year was you, right? Hisoka smiled. After all, this is the fastest method, isn't it? If it were the examiner, he would definitely not be able to withstand my attack. Sats was silent for a while. It's not an example. If you still attack the examiner in the next exam, I will directly disqualify you from the exam. Hisoka shrugged. Those candidates who stood next to the middle-aged and supported the anthropomorphic ape returned to the crowd in embarrassment. Satsuki's eyes flickered. This test was destroyed by Hisoka. Then, the next test needs to be a little more difficult. Only in this way can enough candidates be screened out when they arrive at the second examination room. The forest in front is the first examination room. There are many monsters living here, and all you have to do is follow me and run out of this forest. This place is called Damien Wetlands, also known as the Deceiver's Denver. The real first exam has begun. Sats turned around and ran towards the forest. Some people complained. Run again. Completely a physical test, not a hunter test at all. However, when they enter the forest, they will understand. The forest in front of him is more than physical strength. There are all kinds of dangers here. This level tests the question of how to survive in the face of an unknown wild environment. There are a lot of monsters living in the forest. The anthropomorphic ape, just now, is one of them. Countless myths shrouded over. The students gradually lost their sight. Richard and Pince also got separated. With Pince's ability, Richard didn't need to worry that Pince couldn't get through here. For Peng Si, the fog here and the woods were not a hindrance at all. Those bees will provide all the information to Pince. Richard, on the other hand, wanted to use these monsters to experiment with his new nun. A picture of greed. There is no one around, not even the breath of the hunter exam staff. In fact, in addition to the examiners, there are many staff here. The purpose of these staff is to make these candidates more likely to survive when their lives are in danger. After all, these people are considered to have good potential. A huge tortoise appeared in Richard's line of sight. Strawberry turtle. Strawberries grow on the body, hiding in the bushes or in the fog. Camouflage. Wait until someone approaches and attack immediately. Strong bite. A human they can bite off in one bite. Richard stepped forward. Strawberry turtle saw Richard. Sudden, the strawberry turtle attacked, twisting its neck, opening its mouth wide and biting at Richard. Picture of greed. A scroll appeared in Richard's hand. After that, it suddenly unfolded. The strawberry turtle is on the picture scroll. But no matter how you bite it, you can't break it. Richard thought for a moment. The picture scroll became longer, and under Richard's control, it wrapped around the neck of the strawberry turtle, constantly tightening it. Immediately, the strawberry turtle became unable to breathe and struggled desperately, until he was strangled to death by the picture scroll. Richard retracted the scroll. The defensive ability and winding ability of the picture scroll have been tested. Next, this tests scroll's mental pollution ability. Richard sums up the Sonata of Madness, and the picture scroll agreed. In the Sonata of Madness, the creatures that can be heard become crazy and lose their conscious control, while the picture of greed can greatly magnify the inner greed of the creatures that can be seen. Both are spiritual effects. Richard calls it mental pollution. Another killer turtle appeared. Richard didn't approach, but quietly unfolded the picture scroll not far from the strawberry turtle, and then made a little noise to attract the strawberry turtle's attention. Strawberry turtle looked over. His eyes were focused on the scroll. Richard noticed. Immediately, the strawberry turtle's line of sight became strange. It's like seeing tons of delicious food. Fascinated eyes. 1 by 2 bites. Strawberry turtles gnaw on the soil and stones on the ground, even if the mouth is full of blood. The greed of this strawberry turtle lies in food. The effect of the picture scroll of greed will not be as serious as the crazy Sonata. However, after sinking into the fantasy, it becomes an easy thing for me to kill the enemy. Richard took out his recorder. Use burrows, read the bullet. A bullet directly hit the strawberry turtle's eyebrow. The strawberry turtle's head fell heavily and hit the ground. Until death, the strawberry turtle is still immersed in fantasy. This is a good way to die. Sudden, there was a sound of footsteps. Richard turned around and saw a dozen people. There is a vague, enveloping trend. Boy, are you single? Looks like you're out of luck. Now take the initiative to withdraw from the candidates. We can spare your life. Otherwise. Chapter 39, Richard's Conditions. How about otherwise? Otherwise, we can only kill you. A young man said, There is no way. After all, we are competitors. We will not let go of such a good opportunity now. Kill you, and then our competition will not be so fierce. Do you think so? A middle-aged man snorted coldly. Do you still want to alienate us? Never mind, we are a team. Only we can pass the hunter exam this time, because we will continue to eliminate you during the exam. 1 by 1. This environment is really good for us. Kill you, no one will know. Especially a single person like you. Richard shook his head. I'm not interested in alienating you. The reason why I ask this is that I just want to make sure of one thing. What's the matter? Are you all damned? Before these people could react, Richard's attack had already fallen. Picture scroll maze. Richard's breath was continuously fed into the scroll, and the scroll became longer and larger, entwined and surrounded, covering the entire nearby area. With Richard as the center, the radius is 10 meters. More than a dozen people all fell into the picture scroll maze. What is this? This unprecedented change surprised them. So weird. Such a huge picture scroll appeared out of thin air, and this picture scroll was so tough that it could not be broken open with a knife. A young man forced himself to calm down. Pretend to be a ghost. I burned your painting. The young man took out a lighter, but it didn't work. This picture scroll is not real paper, but is transformed by Richard's thoughts. If a lighter can solve it, then Richard's nun will cost nothing. A middle-aged man noticed what was on the scroll. His eyes became blurred involuntarily. Money, a lot of money. The middle-aged man lay on the ground, constantly picking up the soil and stones beside him and stuffing them into his arms. It's all mine, it's all mine. The people next to him were dumbfounded. Are you crazy? However, immediately, he also looked at the words in the picture scroll. Greed took over their consciousness all at once. Too weak. Not ordinary weak. Richard's mental pollution ability, even members of the lizards, can't resist for a long time, let alone these ordinary hunter exam candidates, who haven't even mastered the recitation. At a glance, it falls. Mine, all mine. The two fought and fought. Richard was standing high, looking down. Without Richard's need for further action, these people are already under the influence of greed, lose control, and fight. It reminded Richard of a picture. Saw you in mind. Faced with a group of robbers, the monkey turned into a gold ingot, allowing these robbers to kill each other. Falling down one by one, only one remains. A small mound was piled up in front of this man. Richard took out his recorder. Use Burroughs, read the bullet. Boom! This man's head was directly smashed. Richard retracted the scroll. Sudden. Richard felt an extremely dangerous aura. Suddenly turned back. Hisoka. A figure emerged from the bushes. Hisoka stared at Richard with a twinkle in his eyes. I didn't expect it. I lost my sight. I thought your nun had been developed and abolished, but I didn't expect it to be your disguise. When you were in the Sky Arena, you took it out and fought against Sadeso. It was just an illusion. That one just now is your real nun. Very funny. Hisoka licked his lips. Richard frowned. Richard didn't expect Hisoka to appear here, especially so unlucky. Also let Hisoka see the picture of greed. What do you want to say? Have a fight with me. Hisoka got a little excited. Richard has some knowledge of Hisoka. Hisoka likes to find interesting opponents. Not exactly strength. Gon's strength is not strong at all, but because of a certain quality, Hisoka took a fancy to it. In addition, among the Phantom Troop, there is more than one strong. But Hisoka only saw Crusoe. With feet and strength, he also fought a battle with Hisoka. In the entire brigade, Crusoe and Featon were relatively stronger, and Richard rated them as B-level. But Hisoka has no interest in Featon at all. Not interested in. It's not up to you whether you are interested or not. It's just the two of us here. Could it be that I attack you and you won't resist? Hisoka narrowed his eyes slightly. I don't resist. Hisoka froze. What's the meaning? Richard said. It literally means, according to my judgment, I am not your opponent. So if you shoot at me, I will not resist, but you have to bear the pursuit of my death thought. Richard said this on purpose. Richard rated Hisoka a B. My current rating is C. But Richard didn't think he was incapable of fighting. The picture scroll, maze opened. Crazy Sonata blows. Hisoka doesn't necessarily hold back. If Hisoka really attacked Richard, of course Richard would resist. Waiting to die is not Richard's character. Richard said this on purpose, just to dissuade Hisoka. Hisoka's character, Richard understands. Sure enough, Hisoka's interest was greatly diminished after receiving such a reply from Richard. However, if you want me to fight with you, I can also agree, but I have one condition. What conditions? You find me a Dark Sonata, and I promise to fight one-on-one with you. Chapter 40 Food Hunter Dark Sonata? That's right. Richard nodded and said, as long as you find the Dark Sonatas, whether it's for flute, piano, violin, or harp, you can. I can promise to go to the Sky Arena with you and have a ring battle. Hisoka's eyes flickered. You said. I said. It is good. Hisoka restrained his momentum. Watching Hisoka leave, Richard looked away. Richard is not entirely sure whether he can convince Hisoka, but now that Hisoka has agreed, it proves that Richard's previous speculation about Hisoka is correct. Because Gon was too weak, he let go of Gon, and even help Gon collect number cards. Because Ilmi is a killer, I have no interest in fighting outside the mission, so I didn't fight Ilmi. It was not until the first chapter of the Kajin Empire that I gave Ilmi a mission. An assassination mission to himself, hoping to get a perfect battle with Ilmi. And with Krallo, the same is true. In the face of Krallo, who had been removed, he had no interest at all, waiting for Krallo Nun to recover before Hisoka fights Krallo. What Hisoka cared about was not whether he could win. It's about whether the fight is fun enough. An interesting opponent, coupled with the opponent's all-out effort. That's what Hisoka wanted. Hisoka couldn't tell whether Richard's words were lying. He could only choose to believe it. And Richard gave the Hisoka condition. A dark Sonata and a real battle with Richard. So Hisoka chose to compromise. Richard doesn't like pointless fights. Moreover, the current Richard, there is no 100% certainty of defeating Hisoka. Then, on the condition of Dark Sonata, it is the best choice. Richard suspects that his nun has something to do with the Dark Sonata. Requires Dark Sonata. It would be a good thing if Hisoka could collect it for Richard. In addition, at that time, Richard's strength must have risen to Hisoka's level or exceeded Hisoka's level. A fight with Hisoka is not impossible. The ability of the greedy picture scroll, I have almost tested it. Go ahead and take the test. Richard stepped forward, slowly chased up. This level will eliminate a lot of people. Richard remembers that there were more than 300 people who entered the forest at first, and only 100 people left when they left the forest. More than half of the people were eliminated here. But correspondingly, those who can pass through the forest, basically in the human world, can be regarded as elites. Leorio, who barely passed the last long run. This time, it passed relatively smoothly. A figure entered Richard's sight. A boy with short blonde hair. Kurapika. Hearing the voice, Kurapika turned around and saw Richard. Her pupils shrank suddenly. Because of Glaya's elimination, Kurapika looked down on Richard a little. But because of Killua and Gon's words, Kurapika takes Richard seriously again. Also, Kurapika just played against Hisoka, although only one round. Hisoka didn't show his true skills at all, but Kurapika already felt Hisoka's strength. So, what about Richard, who is more dangerous than Hisoka, in Leorio's mouth? To what extent will it be? But Kurapika was worried. Richard is not the same as Hisoka. Richard won't be looking for trouble. A pointless fight that Richard didn't want at all. Richard directly overtook Kurapika. Kurapika breathed a sigh of relief. Gradually, the trees became sparser. This means that everyone has reached the end of the forest. Just get out of the forest. The test of this level is considered complete. Richard. After seeing Richard, Peng Si hurried over. Peng Si was the first to follow the examiner out of the forest. One after another, someone came out. Hisoka, Gon, Killua, Gitaraker, Bakur, Leorio, Kurapika. A huge door appeared in everyone's sight. Sets looked around for a week. First of all, congratulations on passing the first test. All of you who came here are qualified. There is the examination room for the second assessment. Please come in. As he was talking, the door opened. A huge square. 2 rows of cooktops. 2 figures. Sitting together is a woman. The other stood a huge fat man. There's an aura of thought in both of them. Food hunter, Menchi and Barrett. Richard couldn't help thinking of another examiner. Examiner for last year's hunter exam. Seriously injured by Hisoka, he resigned as a hunter examiner and entered the base tower, where he wanted to take revenge on Hisoka and killed Hisoka. Practiced the whirling blade, but still not Hisoka's opponent. Killed by Hisoka. It may be because of what happened last year that the Hunter Association has improved the quality of this year's examiners to prevent what happened last year from happening again. When a human-faced ape appeared before, if Seisai was too weak, he might have been killed by Hisoka. Sat stepped aside. Menchi, Barrett, the rest is up to you. Menchi nodded. It is good. Chapter 41, the third examination room. Menchi got up from his seat. Have you seen these stoves on the side? This assessment is cooking. Use the pigs in the forest outside as ingredients to make roast pigs. As long as the 2 of us feel delicious at the same time, then we will pass the test. Now let's start. Menchi's introduction is simple. Richard is in no hurry, because Richard knew that this exam would be canceled. Menchie is too strict with the dishes prepared by the candidates. There are not many people who are really good at food, including Richard. Richard used to be the young master of the gangster family and didn't need to cook himself. But after awakening the memory, he was immediately hunted down. Since then, Richard has been improving. Until now, Pensy was a little worried. Richard, are you good at cooking? Won't. Richard glanced back at Menchie, then looked back. But don't worry, most candidates will not. Let's go out with everyone. Now that he knew that this level would be canceled, Richard chose to deal with it. Unqualified. A series of voices sounded. A hunter was dissatisfied and yelled at Menchie. I think Menchie is wasting everyone's time and not fit to be an examiner. This made Menchie angry, took out the kitchen knife in his hand, and got ready to do it. But it was preempted by Bocara. The provocateur is knocked into the air. Richard took a serious look. Menchie's strength is initially rated as C grade. Bocara, probably D class. In the case of Sats, I didn't see him make a move, but you can easily take Hisoka's cards. Even if Hisoka doesn't use his full strength, Sats' strength will be at least C rank. An airship appeared in the sky. An old man jumped straight down. The expressions of Menchie and Bart immediately became serious. President, Netero, president of the Hunter Association, the strongest ever among human beings, according to Netero himself. Now he is less than 1/5 of his peak period. So in the human world, there should be someone stronger than Netero. Kim Freaks, Parastone, Beyond, all possibilities. These people are geniuses, and it's at its peak. Needless to say, the peaks of these geniuses are not even 1/5 of Netero's peaks. In addition, there is a legendary existence. East Freaks, one of the ancestors of Golden Freaks, a legendary figure who wrote Journey to the New World. A lot of news about the Dark Continent comes from East Freaks. It's just breath. It's different from others. Richard looked away. I'm still a long way from Netero. Netero looked at the candidate, then at Menchie. Menchie, it's over. For these candidates, your requirements are too strict. After all, this is the selection of hunter, not simply the selection of food hunter. This exam, please cancel it. Menchie bowed his head. President, I'm sorry. Prepare for the next exam. Do you have any ideas? Menchie hesitated. Not far from here, there is a cliff. As long as the candidates can take the spider eggs from the cliff and cook them, they will be considered to have passed the test. There is no need to test cooking skills, but courage and strength. President, what do you think? Netero nodded. Can. Arrange all the candidates to get on the airship. Yes. Not long after, the airship landed. Come to the edge of a cliff. Menchie introduced. Below this cliff, there's a kind of spider. This time, the test is to jump down and get the eggs of these spiders, one for each person. As long as you get it, you'll be considered qualified. A student glanced down. So deep. What kind of assessment is this? Don't you want us to die? Menchie shook his head. Forget it. I'll show you the demonstration. Menchie came to the edge of the cliff. After that, take a leap. Everyone looked down worriedly. Then Menchie caught a spider's web. After that, remove a spider egg. Seems to be waiting for something. A gust of wind suddenly blew up and descended from the cliff. Menchie let go. The figure was blown up by the wind. He moved his body in midair and fell back to the cliff. Don't say you can't pass such a test. It couldn't be easier. For those above the standard, it really couldn't be easier. However, for those who are not strong enough, or who are not brave enough, it is very difficult to pass this level. Leorio has to be highlighted here. The long distance running in the first section of the underground passage was bumpy. The second section of the cheater's lair is quite satisfactory. And this one, reference number, more than 100. The number of people who passed was less than 50, and Leorio turned out to be one of these people. I have to say that Leorio has really made great progress in this exam. Richard and Pence passed without a hitch. For the rest, many are familiar faces of Richard. Hisoka, Ilmi, Tampaba, Netero smiled. The second exam is over. Candidates who have passed the exam, please get on the airship and speak. We're going to the area for the third exam. Set off. Chapter 42, Have We Met? Fewer than 50 candidates. In terms of standard, It is already considered an elite level. After all, being able to find the first exam venue for the Hunter exam has already surpassed the vast majority of people and stand out from the more than 400 people. Being 1/8 of that lead is a testament to how good these guys are. One candidate, one room, small single room. However, on the airship, everyone is not qualified to be picky. After Richard had dinner, he went back to his room and sat cross-legged on the ground. Before, Richard has been training in physical fitness and actual combat. Now, Richard is more spiritual practice. In a sense, the potential of spiritual energy is even greater. Just like Netero. Will the day-to-day punching training have any special effect on Netero's physique improvement? Won't. That kind of practice enhances Netero's spirit. The power of spiritual energy creates the power of Netero. However, what Richard didn't notice was that when he closed his eyes and concentrated his breath, a sound that ordinary people could not hear was emitting from his body, murmured as if from the abyss. Richard's anger changed little by little. After an hour, Richard finished meditating and opened his eyes. Richard went to the common area. This is the viewing area of the airship. Above and on both sides are transparent glass. As soon as you look up, you can see the night sky. As soon as you look down, you can see everything below. It was late at night, and there was no one else but Richard. Richard heard a little noise. It came from a training room not far away. I remember, maybe Netero and Gon and Killua were practicing. Netero must know who Gon and Killua are. There's no reason not to know. Netero and the Zoldyck family have a good personal relationship. Maha Zoldyck played against Netero a long time ago, and Netero became the only one who survived the fight against Maha Zoldyck. This sentence sounds as if it refers to Maha Zoldyck being stronger, but in reality, it means that Netero is stronger for surviving from a killer, or the task is canceled. Just like Geno and Silva, when facing Crawlo, the 10 old men died prematurely, causing the mission to be canceled. Geno and Silva give up kills on Crawlo. But this situation cannot happen between Maha Zoldyck and Netero. Then there is only one possibility left. That is, Netero is stronger than Maha Zoldyck. A killer cannot kill someone stronger than himself. And Gon is the son of Kim Freaks. Kim Freaks is one of the few people that Netero values. The height is still above Porter White and Paris Stone, even above Netero's own son, Beyond. As a rule, the Hunter Society will not give none to an unlicensed professor. Killua, on the other hand, broke this rule. In the middle, Netero must have reached some kind of agreement with the Zoldyck family. Heart Source, created by Netero, and Killua is the most valued son of the Zoldyck family. Could it be related to the Dark Continent? Netero has been to the Dark Continent, but he chose to return to the human world, and it is forbidden to go to the Dark Continent, at least while he is alive, because of humans can't deal with the weirdness and danger of the Dark Continent. Netero felt like he couldn't do it. It may also be because the peak period has passed. So nurturing young people, probably Killua, Gon, and even others, were chosen. Killua's Zoldyck family background, coupled with Netero's heart, will definitely surpass Silva, Geno, and even Maha Zoldyck in the future. Gon's potential is no worse than Gold Freaks. After all, Gon's body is the blood of Dong Freaks. And Gon's mother, always unknown. That could be a pivotal point. Richard thinks it is very possible. In addition, in the Chimeric Ant incident, Netero only brought Lawu and Norbu with him, which is also very suspicious. If all the 1,200 branches are shot, it will not be so troublesome to kill the Chimeric Ants. And the use of bombs is not necessary. Detonating them by themselves can find a more suitable way. None. In itself, there are countless possibilities. It's not a simple level of strength or weakness. The head of the Chameleon Division is so much weaker than Yuppie, but the Chameleon's Nun is still useful to Yuppie. Richard stopped. There's no need to think about this now. What I have to do is to improve my strength and find the source of my Nun. After the Hunter exam is over, I will go to the Dark Sonata. Sudden, there was a sound of footsteps. Richard turned back. A figure came this way. Gitaracker, also known as IL Fan. Seeing Richard, Ilmi frowned, quickly looked away, and walked to the side. Look up and look at the night sky. There is only a trace of the moon tonight. The endless night is like a curtain, and countless stars are scattered on the curtain. Ilmi hesitated and turned to Richard. Have we met before? Richard smiled. Your Excellency is wrong. I have never met Your Excellency. Ilmi nodded and looked up at the night sky again. Chapter 43. The Fallen Tower. Richard went to the room. Ilmi stared at Richard's disappearing back, and his eyes flickered. Similar to that person. However, it shouldn't be the same. That's just a rookie who has just mastered none for a while. And this, even I'm not sure I can take it. Richard turned the corner. A figure just came over. The two stopped at the same time. Richard looked at the visitor. Hisoka. A flash of excitement flashed in Hisoka's eyes, but he quickly suppressed it. Sonata, I will find it. As long as you find it, I will fulfill the promise and go to the Sky Arena to fight with you. Very good. Richard glanced at Hisoka's back and looked away. Hisoka must have gone to Ilmi. There is no doubt about that. The two have known each other before and have established a good friendship. For the Zoldyck family, friendship is a luxury. Except Miji, because Miji is the trash of the Zoldyck family. An existence that has almost been abandoned. Not even none. And Cthulhu, who is younger than Miji, has learned none. It can also be seen from here that the Zoldyck family attaches great importance to Killua. Ilmi, Killua, Miji, Cthulhu, Aluka. Aluka doesn't count. This existence is regarded by the Zoldyck family as a monster, not a child. Ilmi, Cthulhu, learn none at a very young age. Only Killua and Miji are different. But Killua and Miji are different. Miji was abandoned by the family because he was too wasteful. The Zoldyck family simply disliked those network methods that Miji was proud of. Not that it's useless, but compared to the inheritance of the Zoldyck family, it is insignificant. Killua, really the entire Zoldyck family, cultivated with all his heart. Silva only showed his father's side when he faced Killua, in addition to the cultivation of the family itself. You can also get the inheritance of the source of the heart. It is equivalent to being cultivated by this world, 2 of the 5 great nun. The top 5 nun are currently identifiable. One is Netero. The other is Golden Freaks. The other is Maha. And there are 2 who do not know who they are. Maybe Jed. Richard remembers that in the theatrical version, a strong nun appeared, claiming to be Netero's natural enemy. Nun is Rakshasa, the opposite of Netero's abilities. Netero is Guanyin, which represents mercy. Jed's Rakshasa represents resentment. But really speaking, Jade's strength is not as good as Netero. There's another one, maybe the owner of the Sky Arena. After all, it stands out from so many masters. Richard guessed, but it's just a guess, no guarantee of accuracy. Richard. Hearing the sound, Richard turned around. Then I saw Bakur walking towards this side. Good evening. Good evening. Bakur paused and said, Is it convenient to chat? Can. The two sat down on the bench next to them. Richard, the following assessment content may involve some team content. If this is the case, how about our cooperation? Our abilities are matched. You're good at fighting, I am good at archery, and Pensy is good at reconnaissance. If the 3 of us form a team, the competitiveness should be very good. Richard frowned slightly. Do you know the content of the next assessment? Probably guessed a little. Bakur said, I'm not taking the Hunter exam for the first time. Generally speaking, the purpose of the Hunter exam is to examine the comprehensive abilities of candidates. The previous 2 tests tested our endurance, physical strength, courage, and observation. Then the next thing to be tested is teamwork and intelligence capabilities. Single-player combat will be placed at the end. Richard nodded. Yes, as long as it is appropriate. Then it's settled. Explosive Cooner's face brightened. Richard went back to the room. For the cooperation of Bakurti, Richard is casual. This time, Richard passed the Hunter exam with 100% confidence. What Richard cares about is not passing the Hunter exam. Instead, after passing the exam, get Nun's advanced reading skills from the Hunter Association. Round, firm, hard, hidden, flowing. There is nothing wrong with cooperating with Bakur. Richard doesn't look down on the strength of Cure. However, compared to others, Bakur is not bad. It's daybreak. A tall tower appeared in the sight of everyone. Blind Tower, a prison that holds countless criminals. Before getting close, you can feel a strange aura emanating from the tower. The airship stopped at the top of the tower. An examiner stepped forward. Here is the third assessment, and what you have to do is to go from the top of the tower to the bottom of the tower. No matter what method you use, as long as you can reach the bottom of the tower, you are considered qualified. Now, let's get started. After speaking, the examiner returned to the airship. Leave with the airship. A group of candidates stood at the top of the tower and looked at each other. Bakur walked towards Richard, but this time, Peng Si, who was next to Richard, suddenly disappeared. The ground slate turns. Richard walked over quickly, but the slate cannot be opened. The passage that Peng Si entered was a one-person route. Chapter 44, Not a Person from the World. Bakugu was stunned for a moment. Sudden, the slate below moved. Bakuner's figure also disappeared. Richard shook his head. Plans can't keep up with changes. Richard knows a little about the situation of the squatting tower, and there will be some passages at the top. It could be multiple people, it could be single. What the candidates have to do is to pass through this channel. In the channel, the examiner set up various levels. Richard glanced aside. A candidate chose to climb the rock and wanted to go down from the outside. But immediately a group of monsters struck. The candidates were directly killed by monsters. There are fewer and fewer people on the platform. Choose anyone you want. Anyway, no matter what it is, I pass. And the problem is basically not big. Richard found a moving slate. Crack. Slate moves. Richard's figure just fell. A secret room. The door didn't open. Near the door, there's a round table. On the top of the round table, there are 5 bracelets. Richard frowned. The passage for 5 people. Shouldn't this be the one that Gon and Killua went through in the original book? This is really unexpected. Richard wasn't going to have too much contact with him, except Kurapika. But not because of Kurapika, but because of the partner Kurapika will meet in the future, Melody. Richard wanted to get information about the Dark Sonata from the Melody. The 4 figures fell one after another. Killua, Gon, Liurio, Kurapika. Richard. Liurio got nervous when he saw Richard. Richard looked at the 4. It seems that the 5 of us are going to walk this passage together. Don't waste time. Let's get through the level now. Richard took out a bracelet. Put on your bracelets. Liurio is nervous. Kurapika is slightly better. Gon and Killua didn't care too much. Killua doesn't know the danger from Richard's body. After all, the current Killua has not learned none and can only perceive those ordinary breaths. In Gon, character is like that. The rule is that the minority obey the majority. But this rule is useless. After all, the 4 of you are together. But if you make the wrong choice and implicate me, then you should know what the consequences will be. The timer has started. Let's go. Richard opened the door. Liurio came to the end of the line. Gon hesitated. Richard, did you and Hisoka know each other before? Richard glanced at Gon. Why do you ask? The other day, I saw that you and Hisoka greeted on the airship. It seems that you have known each other before, and they seem to be fine. Are you friends? A good relationship? Richard frowned. Where does this come from? Hisoka's excited eyes? It was just the pervert's excitement when he saw his opponent. It doesn't count. Richard said, You care about Hisoka? Yes. Gon recalled what happened at the Deceiver's Denver. That near-death feeling. Richard, can you tell me, Hisoka, how strong is he? About 100 times your current level. Gon's pupils shrank. But for a split second, Gon's eyes lit up again, and he clenched his fists. Am I still that far? Killua next to him was a little unconvinced. Richard, you are exaggerating. Hisoka is strong, but definitely not 100 times as strong as Gon. If you say no, then there is no. Richard glanced at Killua. Now you and Hisoka are not from the same world at all, so it's really not interesting to compare them like this. It is not impossible to defeat none with ordinary people, but it's hard. Moreover, Hisoka is among the none. They are all outstanding and can be ranked in the forefront. Richard judged Hisoka as AB grade. Even Gon, who passed the Hunter exam, and Gon, who opened the door of the Zoldyck family, are not the opponents of those E-rank none, let alone now. Without learning to entangle and train, Gon can't even pass the Jido level. Not the same world? Killua frowned. What's the meaning? Literally, you'll find out later. Gon looked up at Richard. Then Richard, are you from that world? Yes. Richard stopped. The first level is here. Let's go through it. What appeared in front of the 5 people was a door. There's a display on the door. The above is a multiple choice question. Don't choose first. Unify the answers before choosing and follow your own ideas. Rio, who was ready to press down, abruptly withdrew his hand. I choose A. A. I choose B. A. Richard glanced at the 4 and said, then choose A according to the rule that the minority obeys the majority. Smooth all the way. A team can have multiple opinions, but only one voice. Like Phantom Troop, only Crusoe has the absolute right to decide. The rest are subject to Crusoe. This is a qualified team. When the opinions of the team cannot be unified, then the team is equivalent to exist in name only. In the original book, the teammates of the Gone Four were not Richard, but Tampa. So much time was wasted because of Tampa's troubles. Now, there's no such interference factor. Until a floating platform. Opposite sit 5 people. Prisoner dress up. Chapter 45, the murderer who appeared in advance crack. The shackles on the prisoner's hands were released. It's finally time for you. 4 prisoners got up, one still sitting in the corner. A sound came from the loudspeaker in the corner. Richard looked at the 4 of Gone. 1-on-1. This means that the 5 of us, as long as we win more than 3 games, we will pass the test. If possible, try to win. After all, it's a matter of time. We decide the order, and they decide the candidates. In other words, the 2 sides of the battle are almost all decided by them, even including most of the rules of the game. Does anyone want to come first? Richard doesn't want to come first. The plot here is different from the original. Once he really lost, Richard had to use some unconventional means. Richard didn't want to reveal his true strength right now. Let me do it. Kurapika raised her hand. It is good. A slate stretched over. A bald prisoner came out on the opposite side, and when he saw Kurapika, he grinned. I suggest let's fight to the death, the living, and win this test. As soon as these words fell, the expressions of the 3 of Gone changed. Kurapika's pupils shrank slightly. However, it soon became firm. He took out his weapon from behind. Then let's fight to the death. Rio was a little nervous. Can you win? The odds of winning are great. Richard said, the strength of this prisoner is not strong. On the surface, it looks muscular, but the real strength, according to Richard's estimation, is no stronger than Glaya, has been abandoned, and Kurapika, for revenge, has undergone hard training. Really, as expected by Richard, the bald prisoner is no match for Kurapika. Kurapika's offensive became more and more fierce. Boom! One hit, hitting the back of the neck of the bald prisoner. The prisoner of light fell to the ground. A female prisoner stood up. We haven't lost yet. The rule you set is to fight to the death. Only when one side dies can the winner be decided. So, young candidate, are you going to kill him? Do you really want to end an innocent life? The woman stared at Kurapika and licked her lips. Kurapika bowed her head and was silent for a long time. Look up. I remember that the rules of this death match were proposed by him, right? Then why am I bound by this rule? Kurapika suddenly came to the bald prisoner. He grabbed the bald prisoner's collar and took the bald prisoner to the edge of the platform. Below, bottomless. Since he is yours, then you're qualified to surrender for him. Either I will kill him now and throw him from here, or you will surrender. How do you choose? Richard's eyes lit up slightly. This way of breaking the game is okay. If Kurapika voluntarily admits defeat because of this rule, Richard will look down on Kurapika. Such a person is not even qualified for revenge. Hesitantly, it was the woman's turn. Kurapika released a finger. 3, 2, stop. We admit defeat. Kurapika threw the bald head back to the platform, and a prisoner stepped forward and helped the bald prisoner back. Second match, who's on? Let me do it. Gon raised his hand. Opposite is a thin young man. Quick fight. The thin young man looked at Gon and said, in this competition where we don't fight, let's play a game. I have 2 candles in my hand. Let's choose one each. Whoever extinguishes the candle first will lose. How about it? How about choosing the minority to the majority? Richard glanced at the Killua trio. Choose, don't waste time. There's no need to think too much, because the key to winning or losing is not the candle. Killua and Kurapika both seem to have thought of something. I see. Leorio didn't think about it clearly, but it didn't affect the overall situation. Long. The thin young man smiled and threw the long candle over. The two ignited separately. In any case, the winner of this game will be gone, because the difference in strength between the two is too great. Even if the other party did tricks in the candle, it was not just the candle itself that affected the candle. In factors other than candles, the opponent has no advantage at all. Call. When a candle in Gon's hand burned violently, Gon put down the candle in his hand and extinguished the candle in the other's hand. Second game win. Suddenly, in the cell, the figure in the corner stood up. Losing 2 games in a row, you are really trash. The other 4 quickly avoided the man. Obviously, this person is very afraid. Remove the hood. A somewhat sloppy middle-aged man appeared in front of everyone. This is what Richard expected, the strongest among the opponents. Losing 2 games in a row made this person have to come out early. A real murderer. There were dozens of people who died in his hands, and all of them used extremely brutal methods. It can be said that he is a very vicious person. However, that's just for ordinary people. The real strong, even those who are not none, will not be afraid. Who wants to go? Leorio took a step back subconsciously. That leaves only Killua and Richard. Chapter 46, Are You Not Hisoka? Killua took a step back, because Killua wanted to see what kind of means Richard would come up with. Let Leorio be afraid to that extent. Even after seeing Hisoka and some other strong people, they still stubbornly believe that Richard's danger is the highest among all the candidates. This made Killua a little interested. Then I'll come. Suddenly, Leorio recalled something, looked at Richard, and gritted his teeth. Richard, be careful. This is a famous murderer. The number of people who died in his hands reached more than 100. The methods were extremely cruel. Moreover, he killed these people with his bare hands. Gon, Kurapika, got nervous when Leorio did this. Killua glanced at Leorio. Looking back at Richard, Leorio's remarks made Killua a little disappointed in Leorio's judgment that Richard was more dangerous than Hisoka. This murderer, in Killua's view, was not strong at all. Don't worry, it's fine. The middle-aged looked at Richard, his eyes indifferent. Young man, it was your bad luck when you met me, because, as my opponent, there can only be one result, and that is death. My whole body will be torn apart by me. Richard nodded. Yeah, that's really hard work for you. What? It's very hard to tear human flesh into pieces. No, I'm enjoying it. The middle-aged frowned. You're not afraid? Why be afraid? Richard smiled and said, You don't have the ability to threaten me. Let's start, don't waste your time. Boy, the middle-aged face sank. The muscles of the whole body bulged. I will kill you. Whale cried. This is your destiny. But the next moment, the middle-aged suddenly felt that something was wrong. His fist failed. Breathing became so difficult. Looking down, I saw Richard's hand was stuck in his throat. Richard carried the middle-aged in this way, step by step, to the edge of the platform. As a person, I don't like to be stained with blood. Also, this method of death can make you live more than 10 seconds. Don't thank me too much. Richard let go. The middle-aged figure fell involuntarily. Do not. The desperate voice of the middle-aged man sounded. Boom. A very dull echo sounded. Killua was a little disappointed. Middle-aged is too weak, and none of Richard's methods can be forced out. Leorio took a step back subconsciously. Crack. A stone door opened on the opposite side. Let's go. Richard was at the forefront. The atmosphere of the team has changed a little bit. Killua and Gon are nothing, but Kurapika and Leorio involuntarily would stay away from Richard. 5 forks appeared in front of 5 people. Richard frowned slightly. This situation, and what Richard knew, was different. Because it wasn't delayed that much time, the level has changed. Richard went to one of them. Since there are 5 bifurcations, it means that we should separate here. See you downstairs. Richard walked in. Leorio was relieved to see Richard disappear. Killua glanced at Leorio and said, "This is nothing, right? Didn't Karapika do something similar just now?" "But that's different. The one just now, but the dismembering hand, Johnny." Killua shook his head and said, "The prisoner is not strong. I could do it to that extent. It's not a difficult task, Gon. Can you do it too?" Gon hesitated, then nodded. "I should be a little stronger than that prisoner. Speaking of which, Leorio, why are you so afraid of Richard? What have you seen before?" Killua looked at Leorio curiously. After all, from the hunter exam, Richard didn't appear to be that scary. Gon, Karapika, stared at Leorio with equal curiosity. Leorio gritted his teeth. "Since you all want to know, then I'll tell you. However, you must not spread it out, let alone tell you what I told you. That was a year ago. Richard was injured, and I opened a clinic. Some people go after Richard. It's a gangster. As soon as those people walked into my clinic, they saw Richard took out a recorder and played it, and then the gangsters went crazy, self-mutilating, killing each other. Like crazy. Can you imagine such a method? That's why, after seeing Hisoka and so many candidates, I still think Richard is the most dangerous one. That ability is too weird." Karapika's pupils shrank slightly. "You can control the life and death of others just through your voice. Can it really be done?" Killua frowned. Could it be that it was just a pretense that Richard really had some kind of poison, and the recorder was just a cover? "No." Leorio shook his head and said, "Such a cover-up is meaningless. If it's just sound, it can affect this level. I've never seen it before. It's really strange." Killua said, "But there are many strange things in this world. Maybe it's a special instrument." Richard went down the stairs, step by step. This is a spiral staircase. Below is an empty secret room. A figure sitting cross-legged on the ground. Hearing footsteps, opened his eyes. "I waited for you a long time." However, when he saw Richard, the man was stunned for a moment. "Aren't you Hisoka?" Chapter 47, The Death of the Former Examiner. "Are you Richard? I know you. You are Hisoka's friend. Don't deny it. This hunter exam, I saw the communication between you and Hisoka with my own eyes. Since you're here, don't leave. Let me practice with you before I kill Hisoka." Richard. How did I become Hisoka's friend? First was misunderstood by Killua, and now this person is also misunderstood. However, after hearing the other party's words and adding the other party's image, Richard suddenly knew the other party's identity. One of the examiners for last year's hunter exam, seriously injured due to being attacked by Hisoka. This time, I practiced new tricks, thinking that I would be Hisoka's opponent and come for revenge. Richard didn't expect that this person would meet him. "I'm not Hisoka's friend." The young man's face sank. I said, "Don't deny it. What I saw with my own eyes could not be wrong. Hisoka's friend, I didn't expect to be a person like you, and even dare not admit the identity of a friend. However, rubbish like Hisoka deserves such a friend. Come on, I've waited a long, long time for this day." The young man stood up and took out 2 whirling daggers in his hands. "This is the trick I practiced for killing Hisoka. You are Hisoka's friend, so come and try this trick for Hisoka. You won't be disappointed for sure. I'm going to cut the flesh off of you piece by piece." Suddenly, the young man threw the whirling dagger in his hand to the front. The whirling dagger turned in midair, extremely fast. The trajectory is indistinct. Richard dodged the attack of the youth. "Aren't you afraid of being seen by other examiners? This is public revenge." The young man sneered. "Of course not. I'm no longer an examiner, and this is a place I deliberately arranged. There is no surveillance here. No matter what I do here, no one will find out." "No surveillance?" "Of course so. No matter how much you ask for help, even if you admit defeat, no one will know." Richard's expression calmed down. "Then that's fine. It is good." "Yes." Richard looked at the young man and said, "Because of this, I don't need to have restrictions, but I can use any means I know," which made me worry for nothing. "What do you mean?" The youth frowned. "It doesn't make any sense. I was just thinking about whether killing you and using means I didn't intend to use would cause me trouble, but since there is no monitoring, there is no need to worry." The young man's heart skipped a beat. Richard moved. Picture of greed. Picture scroll maze. Under Richard's control, the picture scroll keeps getting longer, bigger, wider, and wrapping around, until the whole space is filled and Richard stops. The youth is trapped in the picture scroll maze. What is this? Painting. A mere painting can stop me. The young man stabbed the dagger in his hand fiercely. But the screen is not broken. Not only is it not broken, but there's no trace at all. The young man's eyes suddenly widened. Why? A figure appeared behind the bursting youth. It's Johnson's idea of death. A whip was materialized. Snapped. The young man staggered and leaned forward. Richard looked at the young man through the gap in the painting. Congeal. There's a lingering breath. This guy is a nun. However, not the very strong kind. Because it's too weak, it's too easy to be killed by Hisoka, so you can't even tell from the original plot whether it's a nun or not. From the way it operates the whirling dagger, it's an emitter. But in the Phantom Troop, Shalnark, who is also an emitter, is too far behind. Even Zoldik's housekeeper, Wudong, can't compare. What's more, even Shalnark of Phantom Troop is no match for Richard now. It's almost over. Another figure appeared. Lizard's thought of death. As one of the members of the Een Beast, the strength of the lizard, according to Richard's judgment, can be ranked in the forefront of the Een Beast. And after becoming the thought of death, it will go further. Boom! The lizard slammed into the youth. The young man flew out. The dagger slashed at the lizard, but it had no effect. Only the sound of metal crashing came out. The young man's expression became frightened. What exactly is this? If you have the ability to withdraw this painting, let's face it face to face. The youth growled. Of course not, Richard. This isn't a worthy opponent. Almost. Richard thought for a moment. Both Johnson's and Lizard's thoughts of death disappeared. The young man's eyes widened, and he looked around. In this observation, the young man's line of sight involuntarily looked at the painting in the picture scroll. There seems to be a strange power that attracts the young man's attention. Young people are caught up in it. His eyes gradually became dazed. A lot. It's all mine. Don't rob me of anyone. It's all mine. The young man's consciousness gradually collapsed. Sink into greed, unable to extricate themselves. The perception of the outside world is almost non-existent. Johnson's thought of death reappeared. An axe was materialized. Boom! An axe fell. The youth fell heavily. Blood flowed out, dyeing the entire ground red. Richard retracted the scroll. Richard, a mass of thoughts of death was born from the youth. I'm going to kill you. I must kill you. And at this time, a powerful attraction emerged from the scroll. Next moment, the young man's thought of death was sucked into the picture scroll. There was a sound of footsteps upstairs. Richard's thoughts moved, and the picture scroll disappeared. Chapter 48. Richard's goal. Hisoka was stunned when he saw Richard. Richard, how will you be here? Do not know. Richard shook his head and said, it might be some ED who got the channel wrong. I originally entered the 5-person channel. Hisoka looked at the corpse on the ground and narrowed his eyes slightly. Is it this person? It seems that it is because of me. He is the waste examiner that I injured last year. This time, he is probably here to take revenge on me. So, are you going to compensate me? Compensation? Of course not. Hisoka shook his head and said, you robbed me of a chance to play. Why should I compensate you? This kind of revenge drama is hard to come across. There was indeed some regret in Hisoka's eyes. Richard couldn't understand. Then you are free. I'll go first. This body is for you. An exit has appeared, and Richard heads straight for the exit. Hisoka came to the corpse. Judging from the traces of death, it was killed from behind, using some heavy weapon, such as an axe. But Richard's hands are not, obviously, Nun's transformation. The last time I saw it, it was a super long picture scroll. Richard, is it the manipulator's ability? Hisoka's eyes flickered. Manipulator's abilities are not easy to deal with. Depending on the situation, they manifest different things. No one knows what abilities the limited things will have. It's much more complicated than the capabilities of emitter, enhancer, transmuter, manipulator. However, this kind of battle is more interesting. Along the channel, keep moving forward. Sudden, a door appeared. Richard pushed open the door. After that, I saw a circular room. Many people have already arrived. Yitaraker, IL fan, Bakotump. A staff member sat not far in front. Congratulations, you passed the customs. Richard nodded and sat down beside him. After a while, Hisoka walked out. Richard thought back to the former examiner. According to the plot I saw in my previous life, this former examiner doesn't seem to have none. However, it was confirmed just now that this guy will be able to none, and he's an emitter-capable person, just not strong. I was killed so easily by Hisoka, and I was considered to have no thoughts. The ability level is E level. The ability is to control the spinning dagger. It's not very compatible with the ability of the picture scroll maze. Both Johnson and Lizard belong to the melee type of nun. Therefore, their strength can be greatly exerted in the picture scroll maze, and they can use the picture scroll to move quickly. When the enemy is affected by the content of the painting, dominated by greed and illusion, come behind these people. It doesn't go well with the recorder either. Richard was slightly disgusted by the former examiner's thought of death. Even this former examiner is stronger than Brass, Corkin, and Johnson. The idea of death with the recorder should be of the control type and the long-range attack type. In the case of picture scrolls, it is better to use assassins and melee types. Richard recalled the plot. The powerful transmuter nun, Franklin, Liza, are all considered, but it is not easy to obtain their thoughts of death. These two people are not weak, and they both have teams. Assassin type, Killua, Phaeton, Illinois fan all count. But again, it's not very provocative. Suddenly, Richard remembered something. Chimeric ants. The division leader of the chimeric ant, Ren's strength is rated between C level and B level. The amount of thought these chimeric ants must have reached the B level, but for the use of thought, these chimeric ants are not very good at it, and they can't compare with the human nun. That's why they all lose. However, what I got is the thought of death, and the main thing I care about is the amount of none and the thought. It's me who operates these thoughts of death. Then, when they become thoughts of death, that's a real B grade. Richard's eyes flickered. Involuntarily, Richard looked in the direction of Bakur. The emergence of the chimeric ant was accompanied by the death of Bakur. Those ants got Nun's information from Bakur's brain. Richard, after Punk C came out of the passage, he trotted towards Richard immediately. Well enough. Richard glanced at Pence. Apart from being a little dirty, there is no injury. It went well. That's good. One after another, some candidates walked out of the passage. One by one. Killua. Karapika. Gone. Time up. Leorio stuck and clicked out. Because of Richard's appearance, the process is quite different from the original plot. However, the number of people who passed was still the same. Congratulations, everyone passed this test. Let's take a rest here today. I have already arranged rooms for you. Tomorrow, an airship will send you to the venue for the next assessment. Good luck to everyone. The room arranged in the prison is very simple. It can be seen that it is obviously a temporary prison cell for renovation. Dinner was equally humble. Back in the room, Richard sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and focused. Do spiritual practice. A different aura emanated from Richard's body. Midnight, the roar of a prisoner woke everyone up. Chapter 49. Monster Richard opened his eyes. After hesitating for a while, Richard walked out of the room. Like Richard, there are many candidates. All heard movement. A staff member quickly explained, "Don't worry, it's just that there is something wrong with one of the prisoners in the prison. We can deal with it right away. Everyone can continue to rest." But at this time, sudden, boom, another huge noise. Crack, the wall shattered, and a figure was knocked out directly from it. This person, no, it shouldn't be counted as a human anymore. The body becomes twisted. The skin turned green. Also gross scales. His cheeks were full of tiny eyes. This is a monster. I saw that this monster was dragging half a corpse in its hands. After noticing the crowd, he turned his attention. Grin. He brought the half corpse in his hand to his mouth. Take a bite. Blood splattered. Vomit. Everyone's faces sank. There are not many good people among the candidates in the field. It is possible that many people's hands have been contaminated with countless blood. However, eating people is still unacceptable to everyone. Murder and cannibalism are not the same thing. Food, you are all food. The monster stepped forward and strode towards the examinee. Those foods are too unpalatable. You are more fragrant. The staff member blocked the monster. Leave everyone, I'll block him. In an instant, most of the candidates ran outside. Richard, seeing that Richard didn't move, Pence stopped. Pungsi, you go out first, and I'll take a look. But don't worry, I'm sure. All right, Pence left with the big group, but there are still many people left. Richard, Hisoka, and Gon. Gon stopped, so Killua had to stop. Leorio was the fastest one. And Kurapika, after measuring the comparison between his own strength and the monster, also chose to leave first. In Hisoka's eyes, there was a light called interest. This is something Hisoka has never seen before. Eat you. The monster roared towards the workers. Boom! Next moment, the staff flew out. It was like being hit by some prehistoric beast. The monster's gaze was on Richard and the others. After that, it stopped on Hisoka. You are the most delicious. Eat you first. Hisoka frowned slightly. Is it simply judged by the amount of ki? What a retarded creature. Immediately, Hisoka's interest diminished a lot. However, the monster rushed towards Hisoka, so that Hisoka had to fight. Gon tried to do it, but was stopped by Killua. Gon, now that monster's opponent is Hisoka. Let's watch first. A deck of cards appeared in Hisoka's hand. A self-proclaimed magician. But Hisoka's ability has nothing to do with cards. One is flexible love. One is the illusion of thinness. Playing cards are just an illusion created by Hisoka. People mistakenly think that his ability has something to do with poker. After that, use the information asymmetry to defeat the enemy. Richard looked at the monster. Congeal. Suddenly, Richard's expression changed, because Richard saw that there was no breath on the monster's body. This monster is not a nun. Wrapped around him is something else. A faint, black scent. It's not Nien. Why is this monster so strong? Easily break a wall with one punch. Even steel, in the eyes of this monster, is just something that can be kneaded at will. No thoughts. However, in terms of strength, it's not necessarily worse than Yuvajin in the Phantom Troop. Hisoka's fist can't do much damage to monsters. Monsters can only be cut with chi-enhanced playing cards, but only a small mouth, and it recovers in an instant. The disadvantage is that it is not flexible enough. In the face of a flexible and experienced nin player like Hisoka, it is impossible to fight. This makes the monster angry. Just dot. Hisoka glanced at the monster lightly, then turned to Richard. Richard, are you interested? The abilities displayed by the monsters made Hisoka less interested. No, Richard didn't want to reveal too much of his abilities in front of Hisoka. With the tyrannical level of this monster's vitality, Richard could not have killed this monster without using the Sonata of Madness or the Picture Scroll of Greed. But these two abilities, Richard didn't want to expose to Hisoka for the time being. Gon stood up. Killua's expression became solemn. Hisoka glanced at Gon and refused. It's a pity that you're dead now. I'm waiting for you. The day you grow up, don't let me down. Do what you have to do. Otherwise, I might kill you in advance. A strong, murderous aura was released from Hisoka's body. Gon wasn't convinced. However, being directly crushed by this momentum, it was impossible to advance an inch. Hisoka's expression became serious. Stretching love, Hisoka's chi turned into a rubber-like state. A section stuck to the monster's body. The other section was glued to the wall next to it. The monster stepped forward suddenly. This huge force suddenly pulled the wall. Boom! The wall collapsed suddenly, drowning the monster in it. Chapter 50. The fourth assessment, seeking evaluation tickets. That's it. The monster jumped suddenly. Just jumped out of the ruins. Of course not. This is just the beginning. Hisoka took out a dagger. Spinning dagger. The former examiner who was killed by Richard. Just seeing, Hisoka stuck this dagger in the love that stretches freely. After that, go back quickly. The love that stretches freely. The two ends are attached to the stone pillars next to them. This stone pillar is not an ordinary stone pillar. It is the load-bearing column of the entire basement tower. Richard, do me a favor. Richard nodded and stepped forward. Come behind Hisoka. Pulling on Hisoka's shoulders, he stepped back. Okay. Richard let go instantly. Just saw Hisoka's figure at a very fast speed bounce towards the monster. The speed of Hisoka itself, plus the elasticity added by the love that stretches freely. Hisoka's figure seemed to have turned into a lightning bolt. A knife light flashed. Boom! A red line appeared on the monster's neck. Immediately after, the monster's head slid down, fell to the ground. Scroll. The monster's body dried up at a speed visible to the naked eye. Hisoka threw the dagger in his hand. Ding! Stabbed the monster in the head. Sudden. Richard noticed that some black air floated out from the monster's body. These black breaths are coming towards him. Before Richard could react, the aura of these black air had already merged into Richard's body. However, Richard didn't feel the slightest discomfort. On the contrary, Richard also felt that the energy in his body seemed to become stronger. A warm current flows through the body. Above the ground, the monster's body gradually melted into a pool of blood. What a boring fight. Hisoka walked out slowly. For this monster, Hisoka's interest from the beginning gradually turned into a last resort. The reason why I was interested was just because I saw it for the first time. After realizing that the other party had no brains, Hisoka was no longer interested. Strong is indeed strong. But this wasn't the fight Hisoka expected. Just like Hisoka will not be interested in Yuvijin, but in Liza. Richard's eyes flickered. Why does this monster have a black aura that can be absorbed by me? Could it have something to do with the behemoth in the deep sea? No one can see except me. Richard could clearly feel the changes in his body. The amount of gas has not increased, and it is still at the level of C+. However, Richard felt that his physique had been greatly improved. Richard is a trader. Strengthening the physique is what Enhancer is good at. It is the trait department the least good at. Even if Richard spends a lot of energy on strengthening his physique, the improvement will not be much. This is a very uneconomical thing, and the price is very low. This is Richard's weak point. But now, with the help of this black breath, Richard's physique has suddenly improved a lot. Phantom Troop. Usually the wrist strength is used to evaluate the strength of the physique. Yuvijin is without a doubt number 1 in the brigade. And my current level among the C-level nun can already be ranked in the top, middle, and top. Plus my fighting skills and experience. As long as I can learn the skills of firmness, hardness, circle, flow, concealment, and circle after this hunter exam, even if it's just by fighting without using the Sonata of Madness and the picture scroll of greed. My strength, I can stand firmly at the C rank. And if you count the Sonata of Madness and the picture scroll of greed, it's an unquestionable B grade. A dozen figures quickly came over. It is the examiner with the staff of the Hunter Association. How's the situation? The examiner's gaze turned to Richard. Hisoka is the unstable factor, and the attack on the examiner comes before. Ngan and Killua, just 2 children. Already solved. Hisoka killed that monster, Richard said. The pool of blood on the ground is what the monster turned into after it died. The examiner breathed a sigh of relief. It's fine. You guys, come with me and tell me the details. It is good. The 4 followed behind the examiner. Not long after, the 4 of them walked out. They looked at each other and went back to their respective rooms. Pensy came and knocked on the door. Richard, are you all right? Fine. Richard opened the door, motioned Pence to come in, and said, I didn't even participate in the battle. The monster was killed by Hisoka. I just watched from the side. Hisoka, is it strong? Very strong. Richard nodded. In the next exam, if you encounter Hisoka as an enemy, then don't hesitate, just surrender. It's getting late. Take a rest. The 4th assessment will begin tomorrow. The next day, the students gathered together, still on an airship. This time, the distance is farther. But nothing happened in the middle. Regarding the monster, the Hunter Association did not find any results. Just put it aside. The airship stopped in a port city. The examiner appears. In front of the examiner, there's a box. Next, I will talk about the rules of the 4th assessment. Everyone comes up and draws lots and draws their own numbers. Chapter 51 target number plate, the students came forward one after another. After Richard got the number, he glanced at it and put it in his pocket. In the order of the plot, Hisoka will be the first. However, because there was a problem with the route arranged by the former examiner, the first one became Gitaracker, and Richard became the second. Hisoka third. Then there are Hanzo, Bakur, Pungsi. The number above is the target you want to hunt. Wait, you will all go to this island. On this small island, you will have a week-long competition to win the target's number plate, and you will get 3 points. At the same time, your number card is worth 3 points. Another unrelated number plate is worth 1 point. Only when your points reach 6 or more can you be considered the winner of this level. The means of capture are not limited, and the methods are not limited. Even if you kill them, no one will care. The rules of the fourth test were exactly the same as Richard remembered. Perhaps the only difference is the addition of Richard. My goal. Richard looked at a figure. Hanzo, Peng Si, who is your target? It's a burst library. Richard raised his brows and said, then after we get to the island, we'll follow Bakuer first, get his number card, and then go to my target. Are the bees ready? Pens nodded. All right. Peng Si's ability is very useful in this environment. No one will specifically notice a bee, and in such an environment, it is normal for bees to appear. This means that as long as Peng Si is willing, the entire island can be under Peng Si's monitoring. Everyone get on board. Candidates get on board one by one. A staff member briefly introduced the situation on the island, but not detailed. Not many people listened. At the beginning of the lottery, everyone had already simulated the battle scene after going to the island in their minds. For confident candidates, the first day will be the most suitable time to start. For candidates who are not so confident, they will adopt a more stable strategy. Hide first and observe the situation of other candidates. After that, when the opponent was in a bad state, he suddenly launched an attack. Richard chose the former. After all, among the candidates here, apart from Hisoka and Ilmi, Richard has no confidence in dealing with them. Other candidates will not be Richard's opponents, and Hisoka and Richard already had an agreement. The two won't fight until Hisoka gets the Dark Sonata. Ilmi, unless Richard does something to Killua, Ilmi won't do anything superfluous. Richard remembered that in the original book, Ilmi got his target number plate soon after he went to the island. After that, he found a place, dug a pit, and buried himself in the pit. Wait until the end of the assessment time before coming out of the pit. Island, here we come. The boat stopped. Everyone, wish you guys good luck. Richard and Pence both walked into the woods. A famous candidate disappeared one after another. Leorio chose a direction that was neither Richard nor Hisoka. Most people did not notice the number plates of other candidates, and when the examiner proposed to draw lots, the candidates had already hidden their number plates one after another. Richard remembered it because he knew the content of the assessment in advance. To Peng Si, 2 reminders. Without this news, Richard would still pass smoothly, but in the end it's going to be a bit of a hassle. A bee flew in front of Pensy and landed on Pensy's fingertips. Found it. Yes. Peng Si said, Bakuer is in this direction, and it is still moving forward. Then let's follow. The two followed the bee's lead. Soon, a figure appeared in the sight of the two of them. Who? Bakuga turned back suddenly. A bow and arrow pointed in the direction of Richard and Pence. Richard? Pence, you came to my alliance? Bakuer asked subconsciously, and suddenly felt that something was wrong, and a bad premonition was born in his heart. Isn't it? Your target is me? Pence's target number card is yours. Richard said, so, Baku, now we give you 2 choices. The first one is to give us the number card. In this way, you can save your stamina to get your target number card, and then grab 3 ordinary number cards. Second, choose to resist. Bakuer's eyes flickered. Does it have to be like this? That's the rules of this assessment, isn't it? Bakuer carefully analyzed the current situation. With 1 enemy, and 2, the explosion of the library is definitely a disadvantage. However, Bakuer has never seen Richard's real shot. From the information he learned from Bakuer, Bakuer will not think that Richard's strength is much stronger than his, and Peng Si's strength is weaker than Kuer. Handing over the number plate directly, Kuer was not reconciled. I choose the second one. Without waiting for the voice to fall, Bakuer turned around abruptly. This place is not suitable for bursting library children to play. Richard chased after him. Peng Si, you follow behind a little bit, and use bees at any time to pass on the information of Q. Yes. Pensy nodded heavily. A chase battle has officially begun, but soon it will end, because there is no road ahead It is a huge mountain wall. Chapter 52, Don't Say You're Good, Richard, I Will Resist. Bakur raised his bow and arrow. Even if he knew that he would be the most likely to lose, Cure was still not reconciled, so he just conceded defeat. Come on then. Richard rushed towards Bakur, but the speed is average. Obtaining a number plate is one aspect. Another aspect is that Richard wants to fight Bakur once. An opponent that uses bows and arrows like this, Richard has never encountered before. Richard did not use none, but simply relying on the strength of their own body. Call out. Bakur loosened the bowstring in his hand. A feather arrow shot straight at Richard. Not fast enough. Richard shook his head, moved his body slightly, and avoided the arrow from Bakur. Is really not fast enough. Not as good as Hisoka's cards. You escaped so easily. Bakugu's eyes widened. Richard's strength is stronger than I expected. Explosive Cure gritted his teeth. 2 bursts. The 2 feather arrows were blasted and placed on the bowstring. Shoots 2 feather arrows at the same time. Dodge difficulty multiplied. It's still slow. 2 feather arrows do create more possibilities, but the speed is slower than a single feather arrow. On the whole, it is more difficult than the blow just now. It's not too big. Richard drilled through the gap between the 2 feather arrows. Baraku's face sank. 3 bursts. This time, 3 feather arrows were fired at the same time. I don't believe that you can dodge this blow. But soon Bakur's eyes widened, because Richard not only escaped, and also caught one of the arrows grab it. How can that be? Richard threw the feather arrow in the direction of the explosion. The distance between the 2 was less than 3 meters. This distance, bow and arrow, is already a burden. Bakur took off the bow and arrow and took a fighting posture with a solemn expression. I'm not only good at bows and arrows. Fighting, I'm also good at it. Richard smiled and said, Bakur, I have a suggestion for you. What advice? At any time, don't say good at 2 words. Richard said, because it's a luxury to be good at these 2 words. When you think you're good at something, you have less room to improve in this area. Step forward. Boom. The 2 fists collided. Bakur immediately felt that a powerful force bounced back from his arm. This power, Richard's strength, among the none, is not outstanding. Richard is a trait type after all, instead of enhancer. For enhancer training, only 40% of the effect. But last time, after absorbing the black aura from the monster, Richard's physical strength had risen to a pretty good level. In the brigade, you can line up on the middle. Apart from Yuvajin and Finks, Hisoka, Franklin, Richard, and others, quite. The defensive ability is comparable to Yuvajin. Bakuner's face became very solemn. Richard's offensive, wave after wave. There's indeed a big gap in strength between the 2. Bakur himself said that he is good at fighting, but in reality, it's simply unsightly. This level is really not good at it. Richard easily dodged Bakur's attack, turned around, and came behind Bakur. A hand was placed on the shoulders of Bakuchur. This time, I could have landed on your neck. In that case, you are already dead. Bakugu gave a wry smile. I lost. This is my number plate. Bakur lowered his head and surrendered his number plate resignedly. Richard took it, glanced at it, and threw it to Pence. Good luck. We're leaving first. If you're lucky enough, maybe you can collect 6 points. After all, there's still a full week. Bakugu gave a wry smile. Hopefully. Watching Richard and Peng Si disappear from their backs, Bakur clenched his fists, but soon loosened. It's really me. I'm not as good as others. Maybe I haven't gotten to the point where I can pass the hunter exam. Richard glanced back. I lost my number plate, and I was injured a little bit during the battle with myself just now. The injury was still on my arm, which will definitely have a lot of impact on Bakumer's use of bows and arrows. Under such circumstances, it was very difficult for Bakur to pass this assessment. However, this may still be a good thing for Bakur. Without becoming a hunter, Bakur wouldn't have investigated NGL. If you don't investigate NGLs, you won't encounter chimeric ants, and still when the strength is so low. Even the division commander and guard and a mere ant could not beat him. Because of accepting this task, the entire team was killed. Compared with the Gon and Killua of the same period, is much worse. Compared with Hanzo, Kurapika is also inferior. Only Liurio will be weaker than Bakuer in terms of strength. However, Liurio did not practice because he went to a course about doctors. When Liurio learns none, it will be no worse than Bakuer. Pengsi, let the bees take us to where Hanzo is. It is good. A bee leads the way. The reason why Richard values Pengsi is because of this ability. In terms of strength, Pengsi is not as good as Cure. However, Pengsi's position is not a fighter, and she doesn't need such strong strength. Pengsi's ability to obtain information is extremely strong, and it is useful even for none. Chapter 53. Hanzo's Choice, and at this time, Ilmi found her purpose. A needle is thrown. Immediately, the person is dead. Ilmi took out the number plate, chose a hidden place, dug a pit, and buried himself in the pit. Killua met 3 brothers. Gone like the original, targets Hisoka. The rest, slightly altered and messed up. The appearance of Richard still caused some butterfly effects. Buzz. Hanzo felt annoyed when he heard the sound of the bee and waved his hand to drive the bee away. Sudden, a subtle feeling arises. Hanzo frowned. Inexplicable, a little flustered. Is someone following me? Richard's figure came out of the woods. Richard. Hanzo's expression became serious. In terms of strength, Hanzo could be ranked in the top 4 among this batch of candidates. Second only to Hisoka, Ilmi, Richard, even above Killua, who has been trained as a killer since childhood. Because Hanzo's ninja training has been carried out since childhood. Moreover, Hanzo is much older than Killua, and he is also a genius. Hanzo had deliberately observed Richard. Richard had shown nothing before the previous exam. However, Hanzo noticed the subtle interaction between Richard and Hisoka. Hanzo instinctively felt that Richard was not afraid of Hisoka. Knowing that Hisoka is so terrifying, he is still not afraid of Hisoka. Either he can't tell whether Hisoka is strong or not, or his own strength is strong enough. Hanzo wouldn't think Richard was the former. A person who can communicate with Hisoka in a peer-to-peer manner will only be in existence of the same level as Hisoka. Is your target? Yes. I won't give it to you easily. If you want it, beat me and get it yourself. Hanzo is ready for battle. Richard took a look. Compared to Bakuer, Hanzo is much stronger. With just one gesture, Richard could see that the strength of Hanzo was completely different from that of Bakuer. The level of the 200th floor of the Sky Arena. Because it won't be none, it won't be Sudeso's opponent. But as long as you learn none, even if it's just entanglement, you will be better than Sudeso and the others. Richard remembers. When Killua threatened Sudeso, he just learned to entangle. Coupled with Killua's own killer breath. Let Sudeso go straight away. Not even the Sky Arena. Pengsi, look around and let me know if there is any situation. Yes. Hanzo glanced at Pengsi and looked away. Richard, if someone else comes over, it's better for us to stop immediately. I don't want to let others take advantage of it because of the fight between the two of us. Can. Then let's begin. In an instant, Richard moved, still not using none. Bang, bang, bang. A series of fighting sounds rang out. The speed of the two was very fast. Fist bump. Block. One hit is not heavy. Another hit immediately. Block successfully. Immediately return a blow. Pengsi's eyes widened, because Pengsi found that she couldn't see Richard and Hanzo's movements clearly. Too fast. From the very beginning, Pengsi made a judgment on Glaya's team. Both Glaya and Sancho, Pengsi felt that they had little hope of passing the Hunter exam. As for Richard, Pence is a little bit opaque. But Pence didn't think that Richard was much better than her. Available as the exam progresses, Pence realized that Richard was stronger than her, not a little bit. Therefore, Pengsi clearly identified her position. Intelligence tool man. But at this moment, seeing Richard and Hanzo fighting, Pence was still taken aback. I'm still a long way off. After dozens of rounds, the two are on par. However, neither of them showed their true abilities. Richard, I'm serious. Random. The next moment, a fierce aura erupted from Hanzo's body. Hanzo is a ninja, is a practitioner, not just physical training, but also spiritual training, even without none turned on. But Hanzo already has some of the qualities of a nun. But Richard is a real nerd. Hanzo gets stronger, Richard will only get stronger than Hanzo. The battlefield between the two kept shifting, from clearing to woods, and from woods to clearings. Hanzo stared at Richard, and there was a feeling that Richard had not shown his true skills yet, as if no matter how much he improved, Richard could always be better than him. Not much, just right on the line. This is not something that someone stronger than himself can do, but to be much stronger. Hanzo refused to admit defeat. At the same age, even Richard may be younger than him. However, Hanzo is more rational than Bakuer. Now is not the time to admit defeat and compete with Richard. I surrender. Hanzo stopped and stepped back. Number plate. I'll give it to you. Hanzo threw the number plate to Richard and said, "However, I want to ask a question." "What?" "I can feel that you are hiding something terrifying, like an extremely dangerous beast, hiding in your body. Can you tell me, what is this?" Richard shook his head. "No, but you'll find out soon enough." Hanzo was silent for a while. "I have a request. I would like to compete with you again after the Hunter exam." Chapter 54. One line, two worlds. What about the conditions? Condition? Yes, you want to compete with me. Not I want to compete with you. In fact, I don't want to. I don't really want to fight this kind of meaningless battle. What can you give me? Richard paused and said, "I made an agreement with Hisoka that there will be a ring battle in the Sky Arena, and Hisoka needs to help me find something." "Is that so?" Hanzo fell silent. "I know. I'll think about it first." "It is good." Richard waved his hand and said, "See you in the final." Unlike Baku, Richard recognizes Hanzo's strength. Hanzo's current strength and potential are not comparable to Bakuer. If Hanzo's nun is developed better, then Hanzo can become an elite-level nun. Richard's predictions for Hanzo's future are at least C level. And now, even if Hanzo's number plate was taken away from Richard, Richard still believes that Hanzo can break through. "Richard, where are we going now?" "Find a suitable place and stay here for 7 days. We have to solve the problem of housing and food. Peng Si, let your bees find out if there's a cave near the sea." Yes. Not long after, the bees returned. "I found one, but they can't tell if it's suitable or not." "Then let's go and see for ourselves." As Richard walked, he recalled the fight with Hanzo just now. To be honest, in terms of combat skills, Richard is a little worse than Hanzo. After all, Hanzo has been training since he was a child, and Richard's real training time is only after awakening his memory. But Richard's strengths are physique, strength, and speed. These aspects are enough to make up for the lack of skills. In the actual combat experience, Richard has more than Hanzo. Richard's training came from one battle after another, while Hanzo, on the other hand, might have less practice in this area, especially the battle of life and death. Of course, if Richard uses none, Hanzo is not the enemy of Richard's one. "Richard, here we are." Richard glanced. A cave, leaning against a mountain wall, towards a forest. Not facing the sea breeze, it is still dry. Pack up some firewood, smoke the cave to prevent poisonous insects, and go to the sea to catch some food. Which one do you choose? Peng Si. Pensy hesitated. "I choose the first one." "It is good." Richard walked to the sea not far away. As Richard thought about it, a recorder appeared in Richard's hand. Richard looked into the sea. Many marine creatures swim in the water. Fish, crab, shrimp. Very fat. It may be related to the sparse population here, and the creatures here have not been fished. This reminded Richard. In my previous life, it was actually quite difficult to eat such high-quality seafood. Not without, but cost money. Quite expensive. But in this world, Richard is not very short of money, but he is facing other problems. As soon as he regained his memory, he was immediately chased by the gang. Then came Cameron's attack. As for Sadaiso, it's only a small problem. If Richard is not sure of his own strength, Richard would be better off joining Sadaiso's Big Cable Association. It can only be said that Sadaiso was unlucky and met Richard, so much so that he lost his life. Use Core Gene, strengthen the tongue. Richard has his eye on crab. After that, align the recorder. With one click, the strengthened tongue entered the water and rolled up the crab. Richard uses a puff of air and wraps the crab in it. This is not Conjurer's ability, because Richard simply changed the shape of the chi, but did not change the nature of the chi. The crab was not bound in essence, just feared. 2, 3. Richard stopped. Take the caught seafood and head towards the cave. This fortified tongue is also very useful. But if it's true, it's pretty disgusting. It is now the state of death thought, which is essentially a mass of air, so Richard can accept it. After a while, Richard lit the fire. After cleaning the seafood, I took the simplest way of grilling. Only this, Richard is still able to. Sudden, Richard remembered something, a way that can be used to exercise ki. That is, put your own ki into the food and use your own ki to bake the food. It can exercise the ability to control ki. It's a similar strategy that Professor Biscuit gave Gon, Killua's, to control the shape of the ki and change it into numbers. Both focus on different controls. So Richard took out an extra crab. Put the crab in your hands. After practice, Richard covered his chi on his hands and slowly spread it until the chi range encompassed the entire crab. Right away, Richard felt it. The meat inside the crab is going bad. Not bad, but qualitative change, that is, the process of ripening. However, soon there was a burning smell. Richard shook his head and tossed the crab aside. The first training session failed. But Richard was not disappointed. The first failure is normal. On the contrary, this proves that Richard's idea is correct, and it is indeed possible to train the ability to control ki. Richard, the grilled fish seems ready. Let me see. Richard puts down the exercise in his hands. It's really good, let's eat. It is good. In the bushes in the distance, a pair of eyes looked towards this side and swallowed hard. The same students, also on this island. Why the treatment is completely different. Chapter 55. Pence's rival, an old man, looked at Richard and Peng Si. A tangle flashed in his eyes. The old man naturally analyzed the previous exams. Among the many candidates, there are only a few who are worthy of fear. Hisoka, Gitaraker, Richard, Hanzo, these are all well-recognized and powerful beings. I didn't expect my target to be Richard, but now, the goal is in front of me, and I'm still so unprepared. If I let it go, I'll be too timid. When the old man thought about it, some poisonous snakes crawled out from the old man's side. Following the control of the old man, he slowly crawled in the direction of Richard. Just one bite. With the venom of my venomous snake, it can definitely have a great impact on them. No matter how strong they are, it will not be said that they can be immune to the poison of venomous snakes. Right now, their eating and their defenses are the weakest, and my figure is not revealed. This is my best chance. The old man stared at Richard and Pence. But what the old man didn't know was that Richard, as early as the beginning, had sensed the existence of the old man. Did you still choose to shoot at us? Using these venomous snakes, that is, trying to take our lives. Richard looked at Pence. Peng Si, how about handing over this battle to you? It is good. Pence nodded. Richard remembers. In the original book, Peng Si's opponent was this old man, and the battle between the two ended in Peng Si's victory. Peng Si used a bee to kill the old man, but at the same time, she was trapped in a cave by the old man's snake. It was Gon who rescued Pence, but Pence couldn't make it to the next round because she didn't get 6 points. After the hunter exam, he became a member of Bakuer, and now, Pence, following Richard, has already scored 6 points, but still met the old man. Have to say, this is the role of fate. Under Pence's control, some bees flew towards the bush where the old man was. Both of them belong to the kind of people who control other creatures to fight. In a sense, it is similar. Developed none, and it is quite possible that it will also be an emitter. That is, to extend on one's own skills. For example, Bakuer, in the original book, learned none, which is to strengthen his bow and arrow and shoot 7 color arrows. Different arrows have different attributes and deal with different situations. From the perspective of Nun's characteristics, this is not a badly developed Nun. After all, Bakuer accepted the assistant professor of the Serious Hunter Association. It's just that Bakuner's own strength is too weak to be killed by a spider soldier. Not even the head of the division. A venomous snake swooped down on Richard. Mouth open, 2 sharp fangs with a little crystal. That's the venom of a viper. The old man stared intently. Bite it. But at this moment, Richard shot. Reach out and squeeze lightly. That is, he pinched an inch below the head of the poisonous snake. After that, push hard. Boom! The viper was crushed directly by Richard. Too weak. A snake of this level could not pose a threat to Richard at all. The old man's pupils shrank suddenly. It's actually blocked? Did you take precautions earlier? At this moment, a buzzing sound entered the ears of the old man. The old man raised his head subconsciously. Is to see. A bee is flying towards the old man's location at a very fast speed. Just stab the poison needle. Hiss. The severe pain made the old man take a deep breath. However, this is only the first one. Following this bee, there are more bees. The old man quickly ran out of the bushes. When he looked up, he saw that Peng Si was walking here. And beside Peng Si, there are many bees around. The old man's face sank. I didn't expect these bees to be manipulated by you. The old man thought it was an accident just now, and secretly said that he was unlucky, but now the old man knew that he had already been discovered by the two people on the opposite side. Didn't Richard do it? Just let a little girl of you be my opponent. Pensy frowned. You think I'm not worthy of being your opponent? The old man glanced at Peng Si lightly. Richard, it's really embarrassing, but you, a little girl, don't get involved in this kind of battle. Let Richard come out. I want to fight Richard. My target is Richard. Peng Si's face became ugly. But soon, Pence laughed again. Why should I be angry with you? Even the strength of the opponent can't be properly evaluated. Just relying on appearance to judge, then it means you are a person, and that's it. If you don't do it, then I'll do it first. Pensy waved his hand. Next moment, countless bees flew out of Pensy's hat and swarmed towards the old man. Buzz! The sound of countless bees' wings vibrating sounded. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly. I gave you a chance. If you don't cherish it, then I have no choice but to be polite. How can a mere bee defeat my poisonous snake? A large number of poisonous snakes crawled out from the old man's side. Chapter 56. The death of the snake handler Richard sat by the fire and watched, with no intention of shooting. This kind of battle, in Richard's opinion, is a bit too pediatric. The fighting style of the two is very ordinary, simple and straightforward. It is directly to use the creatures that you operate to rush to reckless. On the old man's side, there are poisonous snakes defending and bees attacking. On Peng Si's side, bees are defending and poisonous snakes are attacking. The two have maintained a delicate balance for the time being. Viper's advantage is size. The advantages of bees are their numbers and flexibility. However, Peng Si has an additional advantage. That is, Peng Si's own physical fitness is better than that of the old man. The old man is old. Before learning none, it has entered the aging stage. Such a person, even if he passed the hunter exam, presumably none of the hunter society will teach its none. Because of his upper limit, it is destined to be impossible to be too high. The professor gave him none, not to help him, but to harm him. With new power, he will definitely want to go to more dangerous areas. However, how can his growth space be compared with those of the young people? Not everyone is Netero, and Netero was only middle-aged when he set foot on this road. The middle-aged man is much stronger than this old man. One body after another fell. The viper fell to the ground and twitched, spitting out white foam from its mouth. The corpses of bees were crushed by venomous snakes. The expression of the old man gradually became serious. At first, the old man really looked down on Peng Si. In the previous exams, there was no sign of excellence. From the outside, she looks like a harmless little girl. But now, over time, the old man realized that Peng Si was far from what he imagined. Pensy is not weak. It can be seen from the strength of these bees alone. Controlling these bees is no less difficult than controlling venomous snakes yourself. Am I going to lose to this little girl? The old man felt the loss of his physical energy. After all, he is old. The other side is very young. It was true that Peng Si could not use the bees to break through the defense formed by the poisonous snake she controlled. But her own poisonous snake could not harm Peng Si either. This battle has turned into a protracted war. War of attrition. There's a high chance that you will lose. This discovery made the old man's face look ugly. A bee broke through the defensive circle of the poisonous snake and came behind the old man. A poisonous needle pierced suddenly. The old man was in pain and subconsciously reached out and patted it. But because of the old man's wave, a bigger loophole appeared in the viper's defense circle. More bees burrowed in. A series of attacks made the old man unable to stop it. You lose. Pence ordered the bees to stop. Leave. You're going to collect other people's number cards now. There's still a chance. There was a trace of loneliness on the old man's face. I lost. Pensy controls the bees to leave the old man. And at this time, the old man raised his head and looked at Peng Si. His eyes were full of resentment and unwillingness. How can I lose to a little girl in your hands? Even if I lose, I can't lose to a little girl. It's spread out. What's the point of my face? Absolutely not. The poisonous snake, which had already been withdrawn, suddenly attacked Peng Si again. A look of panic appeared in Peng Si's eyes. Peng Si did not expect this situation. Seeing these poisonous snakes, she was about to drown Peng Si. A figure appeared in front of Peng Si. It was Richard. Roll. A strong aura erupted from Richard's body. Immediately, all these poisonous snakes flew upside down, like something hit hard. Broken bones. Some even exploded whole snakes. Pence. Richard's voice sounded. Peng Si looked in the direction of the old man. A wave of hands. Kill. Those bees rushed towards the old man. One after another, countless poisonous needles pierced into the old man's body until the old man died. Pence ordered the bees to stop. The old man's body fell to the ground. Those poisonous snakes retreated one after another under Richard's momentum. The old man's corpse turned blue-black, stiff, and cold at a speed visible to the naked eye. Peng Si felt a trace of fear in her heart. Without Richard, she must have died just now. Richard, thank you. Richard waved his hand. Thank you, you don't have to. We are teammates now. It's right to help you. But this matter, I hope, is a wake-up call for you. No matter what the situation is, don't let yourself stand under a dangerous wall, and don't entrust your safety to the character of the other party. Yes, Pensy nodded heavily. I see. I will never make such a mistake again in the future. Originally, Peng Si thought that the other party was too old and didn't want to be embarrassed. She defeated the other party and let the other party leave. I didn't expect this old man to do such a thing. The sky gradually became darker. Richard caught some fish and shrimp from the sea for dinner. This time, Richard deliberately captured some more and practiced in control. Pence, on the other hand, was collecting bees. Use the bees you already have to attract bees from the forest. In the battle with the old man, Peng Si lost a lot of bees. A figure walked out of the woods. Richard looked over. For eyes facing each other, Liu Rio subconsciously wanted to run. Chapter 57. The line of sight in the sky. Liu Rio, what a coincidence. Yeah, what a coincidence. Liu Rio stopped abruptly and smiled bitterly in his heart. He really didn't expect that he could meet Richard like this. Your target number plate. Isn't it me and Peng Si? No, it's not. Liu Rio quickly denied it. But Richard has seen it. Liu Rio is lying. The old man's target just now was Richard. Then Liu Rio's target can only be Peng Si. Richard remembered that in the original book, it seemed to be the same. Your goal is Peng Si. If not, can you take a look at your target number? This Liu Rio gave a wry smile, sighed, and said, yes, my target is Peng Si, but I can't beat you at all. I gave up. Pence looked at Liu Rio, a little wary. Richard said, we won't give you Pensy's number plate, but we have grilled a lot of fish. Would you like some? Liu Rio wanted to refuse. However, when I smelled the smell of grilled fish, I hesitated again. Then I'm welcome. Liu Rio was ultimately unable to hold on. Richard, Pence, have you collected the number plates you need? Almost. I really envy you. Liu Rio was eating the grilled fish, feeling less apprehensive about Richard, and said, I really want to pass this exam. After Richard, you and I talked about the hunter exam last time. I had a lot of research. Getting a hunter license really helped me a lot. However, losing to you, I am convinced. Richard glanced at Liu Rio. Liu Rio, you mean, are you ready to give up now? What else can I do? I'm not your opponent at all, but there is not only one way to pass this assessment. The examiner asks for 6 points, not necessarily to get the target number card. You can't get Pensy's number plate, but you can go and get someone else's number plate. As long as you get 3, Don't you get 6 points? Leorio froze for a moment, then shook his head again. I can't do it. I can't get 1, let alone 3. Getting 3 is not necessarily less difficult than getting 1. Richard said, you can't get this because it's Pensie's number plate, but among the candidates on the island, the only ones stronger than me and Pensie's team are Hisoka and Gitaracker. Other than that, you can try. Also, you can also form a team. If you can't do it alone, you can have 2 people. Leorio's eyes lit up. Richard, what you said makes sense. Richard put down the grilled fish in his hand and said, it's getting late today. I'll allow you to rest for the night outside this cave. You can leave tomorrow morning. Thanks. Richard and Pence enter the cave. Leorio is a nice guy, so Richard is willing to help Leorio. Under such a critical situation, he still did not forget to help Richard get medicine. Richard would not forget this matter. Leorio glanced inside the cave, suddenly realized that Richard doesn't seem to be that scary person. I am afraid of Richard because Richard's methods are too bizarre. But in fact, aside from being a little weirder, Richard didn't do anything overly. In contrast, Hisoka shot and attacked the examiner and the criminals in the basement tower, which isn't worse than Richard. Am I prejudiced against Richard because of my fear at the time? Leorio's eyes flickered. The next day, Leorio left early. When Richard came out of the cave, Leorio had disappeared. There's still 6 days left for the 4th exam. These 6 days, Leorio can't waste a day because he has to collect 3 full number cards, and he still has to make sure that his number cards are not robbed. It's not easy. The candidates in the entire examination room were divided into 3 groups. One stayed out of the way. Ilmi, Richard, Pence. Another is trying to get points. The third is Hisoka. At this time, Hisoka was playing a cat-and-mouse game with Gon. Hisoka's mentality, ordinary people can't capture. Richard understands it better because he knows the plot. But that's all. However, this may be a good thing for Gon. Mental stimulation and pressure from the outside world can make Gon grow faster. Above the sky, an examiner took out a telescope and looked down. The 2 of you had a great time. An examiner next to him said, no way. The strength gap between these candidates is too big, and the Kuer and Hanzo are already quite good in this batch of candidates. And that Gitaracker, after he got the target number plate, he disappeared, and we can't even find him. Richard looked up at the sky. The examiner's surveillance? However, this is normal. In name, the Hunter exam is responsible for life and death, but for candidates with real talent and potential, the Hunter Association still doesn't want to see them die. Especially Killua and Gon. Richard felt that Killua and Gon, the Hunter Association, the Zoldyck family, and Kim Freaks must have done a lot of preparation. Chapter 58, the upcoming final time passes little by little. Richard could feel that his mental energy had undergone a huge change compared to before taking the Hunter exam. The improvement of mental energy has a greater impact on the amount of ki than the improvement of physical fitness. The amount of my anger right now among the C-rank nun can already be ranked in the forefront. Richard divided the strength of a nun into 4 parts. The first is the amount of gas. The second is the control of ki. The third is fighting skills. The fourth is hair. The amount of ki is undoubtedly important. Without ki, the means of the nun cannot be used. This, Richard's current grade, is C+, and all nun skills can be attributed to the control of ki, including coagulation, zhou, flow, firm, hard, and so on. This, Richard's current grade, is C-. Therefore, Richard needs to learn the high-level skills of the nun and improve his control ability. Nobunaga is more or less round. Fighting skills, this is nothing to talk about. Most of the nun people involved in combat when fighting, not limited to close combat. To put it bluntly, ki is a weapon, and how to control this weapon is nun's own business. Why some people can become strong immediately after learning nun. Gon could defeat Jido soon after learning nun. Not just because Gon is a genius, more because Gon is stronger than Jido in terms of fighting skills. This, Richard's current grade, is C+. Fourth, for a nun player, it can be regarded as the most important, which is equivalent to the concept of a big move. But to bring out the power of this big move, the first 3 foundations are very important. Richard's 2 abilities. One is the Mad Sonata. One is the picture scroll maze. According to Richard's understanding of the nun of other people in the plot, Richard feels that in this respect, he can be regarded as a comprehensively. My grade is probably between B and B plus. It mainly depends on the particularity of my abilities. This is the key to the nun, who can fight across levels. Why is Kurapika so threatening to Phantom Troop just after learning nun? Even in a duel, killing Yuvajin? It's because of Kurapika's hair that's strong. The release of Kurapika forcibly enhanced Kurapika's comprehensive strength. But in addition to these, there are intelligence, IQ, environment, etc. that determine the direction of a battle. The fighting outside continues. The leisure is still here. Across a forest, it seems like two worlds. 6 days have finally passed. It's time. Richard got up. Pence followed behind Richard. The sound of a horn spread throughout the island. The boat that brought the examinees back to the port. Congratulations. A staff member smiled. Thanks. Richard and Pence boarded the boat. One after another, someone came out of the forest. Richard looked in the direction of the forest. I don't know how many people will pass the fourth assessment this time. After all, there are two more, the original plot, and the people who are not in the finals. One Richard, one Pence. The third candidate, Gitaracker, IL fan. Fourth, Hanzo. The fifth, Killua. Sixth, Hisoka. The seventh, Kurapika. All of the above are within Richard's expectations. Eighth, Leorio. Leorio was out of breath and was in a mess, but he smiled happily. He failed to get Pence's number plate, so Leorio had to snatch 3 number plates. This is no easy task, but Leorio did it. The ninth, Burst Library Children. Richard frowned. Richard had expected Hanzo to appear. After all, Hanzo's own strength was here. But the Burst Library can still come out. This was beyond Richard's expectations. What Bakur lost was not just the number plate. During the battle with Richard, Bakur was also injured. In this way, it's a Burst Library. Isn't as bad as I expected. But getting a hunter license is not necessarily a good thing for the explosion. In GL, it will be a tragedy to explode Cure. But Richard didn't say much. The two did not know each other. Moreover, Richard took the number plate from Bakur. The rules are in line with the rules, but it is impossible to say that Bakur has no thoughts in his mind. Richard's reminder not only will not be accepted by Bakur, but may also think that Richard has ulterior motives. 10th Gon just stepped on the point and walked out of the forest. It can be seen that Gon is in a low mood, especially when looking at Hisoka. However, after looking at Killua, Gon immediately forced a smile. Gon, how are you? I got 6 points. Great. Killua jumped for joy. On the other side, there were still some candidates standing, those who did not pass the examination. According to the rules, they will not be able to participate in the 5th assessment. When the ship reaches the port, they will leave. But they are much luckier than those candidates who died in the examination room. The candidates who passed the 4th assessment will be taken to the final exam by the Hunter Association. Richard looked away. Compared to the original, only one bald low is missing. Sudden, Richard had a bad hunch. Involuntarily, he looked at Ilmi. Chapter 59 questions before the exam. According to the original book, Bald Low was to be killed by Killua. So who will Killua attack this time? Richard thought back. However, that's not necessarily going to happen. In any case, the 4th assessment has ended. 10 candidates qualified for the final round. The rest, when they arrived at the port, had already been sent away. The 10 finalists boarded the airship again. A voice sounded from the broadcast. Please hear the numbered candidates. Go to the conference room. The president has something to ask you. Thank you for your cooperation. The first to call the number was Hisoka. Leorio came over to Richard. Richard, while on the island, thank you. You're welcome. After all, you healed me at the time, Richard said. That's all in the past, and the watch you gave me is enough to pay. I pawned that watch, but I've used up the money. Richard, if you want to redeem the watch, I can give you the address. Richard shook his head. No, it's just an ordinary watch. As he was speaking, Richard's number was read out on the radio. I'm going to the conference room first. Richard walked towards the conference room and rammed his shoulders with Hisoka. Entering the conference room, there is only one person in it. Netero. A very ordinary look. From the outside, it doesn't look like this is a very strong old man at all. Like Hisoka said, it's full of flaws. However, this is full of flaws, and it is not that Netero is really weak. Rather, Netero presents whatever weakness it wants to present. It has reached a level similar to that of returning to basics. President. Richard, sit down. Thanks. Netero glanced at Richard. I want to ask you a few questions. First, why do you want to be a hunter? I want to get some high-level nin skills from the Hunter Association. So, do you want to improve your strength? Yes. Why? Because I have some things that I have to investigate. Now my strength is not enough. I need stronger strength. I see. Netero nodded. Next question. Among these candidates, who do you care most about? Pence. Why? Because I plan to form a team, and Pensie's intelligence acquisition ability is what I like. Netero nodded again. Okay, third question. Among these candidates, who is the person you least want to fight against? Gitaracker. Why? Because I have no absolute certainty. What about Hisoka? I have other arrangements with Hisoka. Okay, I've finished asking my questions. Let's go out first. Richard nodded and walked out of the conference room. A famous candidate entered the conference room one after another. It's about the finals. Netero has adopted a completely different assessment strategy than before. Almost all the candidates who passed in previous years were 1 or 2. And this time, because the quality of the candidates is too high, Netero's strategy is to exclude only one in the finals, so that the rest can pass the exam and get the hunter license. Richard, what was your answer? Pence and Gitaracker. Hisoka narrowed his eyes slightly. Not me. The battle between us is a matter of time, so it's not you. Is that so? Hisoka glanced aside. What do you think my answer is? Richard frowned. It should be me and Gon. In the original, Hisoka's answer was Killua and Gon. Killua's current strength is indeed stronger than Gon, and the talent is no weaker than Gon. But now, Richard's appearance will obviously break this judgment. No matter how strong Killua is, it will never be stronger than Richard. Sorry, you guessed wrong. Hisoka's expression didn't change. Richard smiled. In the passage, Peng Si walked out. Pence, what's your answer? Both are you. Richard nodded. This answer is mediocre. Soon, all 10 candidates answered. At this time, the airship also fell in front of a huge castle. Everyone, please come with me. A staff member leads the way. Enter the castle. It didn't stop until an indoor training ground. Netero came to the crowd. There were 2 rows of staff standing beside them, and previous examiners. Sats, Menshi, Bokara, prison tower warden. Nick coughed. Everyone, I am the examiner of this hunter exam, the finals. Also the chief examiner of this hunter exam. First of all, congratulations to you. You have passed the previous assessment and came here. I won't say anything extra. Next, I start to announce the rules of the finals. A whiteboard was pushed up by the staff and covered with a curtain. Netero reached out and pulled the curtain. This is your battle list. Below are the names of 10 candidates. And above the candidates' names, there are some step lines. Leorio's face changed. Can only the first place get a hunter license? Kurapika shook her head. Not quite like it. Netero smiled. That's the rule I made. Follow the line above and fight. Losers go to the next round. Chapter 60, Unreasonable Rules, requesting a ticket. Hearing this, everyone was taken aback. According to the common rules, the one who enters the next round should be the winner. But soon, Netero explained. In this assessment, as long as you win the next one, then you will pass the test. In other words, only one of the 10 of you present will fail this exam. And the other 9 can pass the assessment, get the hunter license, and become a real hunter. When these words fell, the expressions of all the candidates suddenly softened. 10 people choose one. Well, most people are not eligible for that. It could only be one of Hisoka, Gitaracker, and Richard. But choose 9 out of 10. Most people have a chance. This is unreasonable and does not seem to be in line with the rules. But the Hunter Association is almost a single word for Netero. Therefore, even if other people have opinions, they can only keep it. Netero has the final say. In Netero's words, it's the rules. By the way, the rule is that when 2 people compete, they can use any means, but they can't hurt the other's life, and only when the other party voluntarily admits defeat can they win. Those who hurt people's lives will be disqualified. Hanzo raised his hand. What if the other party never admits defeat? Then just keep going. The rules just got weirder. However, several candidates were relieved because of this, especially when looking at Hisoka. Richard does not agree with this rule very much. Because this rule comes out, it means that the real battle may not be carried out. This final is going to be a lot of fun, not even as intense as the previous exam. Richard didn't know what Netero was thinking, but that's not a bad thing for Richard. Richard didn't want to show up here. On the contrary, it is easier to get the hunter license, which Richard is happy to see. All Richard wanted was Nun's high-level skills. Richard just thought the rule was weird. Okay, I've finished the rules. Let's start the first game now. Hanzo gone. The two came to the ring. A Hunter Society staff member acts as a referee. Richard didn't watch this game seriously, because there is no need to see it. Hanzo is currently far stronger than Gon. In an instant, Gon was defeated, but when he has already lost, Gon just refuses to admit defeat, because it is not allowed to kill the opponent in the competition, otherwise you will be disqualified. Gon has the guts to persevere. Very capricious. Rules are rules. So Hanzo chose to compromise. I surrender. Gon won, somewhat disgracefully. Richard noticed that at this time, Gon's face was not surprised, but stunned and a hint of remorse. The situation in the original book has changed a lot, and Hanzo admits defeat more simply. Is it because you saw your opponent in the next match? Hanzo's next opponent will be Bakuer, and Bakuer, who is still injured. Richard looked away. It's really self-willed, but to be remorseful, it shows that the nature is not too bad. At this time, Richard remembered another thing. In the original book, Gon and Killua, following Kate, went to NGL to conduct an investigation of chimeric ants. Gon chose to stay when Kate had ordered Gon and Killua to escape. So much so that Kate wanted to protect Gon. Before formally fighting with Catwoman, her arm was broken by Catwoman. Later, after a night of fighting, Catwoman kills Kate. If it weren't for the arm that was broken in the first place, Kate might have escaped. These two things are more clearly remembered by Richard about Gon. Gon's willfulness can be seen in two things, but Richard can understand. After all, Gon's age is here. He has not been taken care of by his parents since he was a child, and he also inherited the blood of gene freaks. Kim Freaks is also a very willful person. If you throw your child to your hometown, you don't care about anything. It would be good for such a person to be an ordinary friend, but not as close friends. Richard remembered that Mo Lawu said something to Killua. At that time, Killua had not yet removed his body, and Ilmi had control over him. Killua doesn't like to face danger that is too risky. The enemy is too strong. Killua will choose to refuse to fight. That's what Mo Lawu said to Killua. Sooner or later, you'll leave Gon and run away alone. But correspondingly, if Gon continues to be so self-willed, sooner or later, Gon will bring his friends to face death together and kill his friends. People have courage, of course, is valuable. However, self-knowledge is equally important. After Kate's incident, Gon should have grown a lot. If it doesn't change, it will indeed bring considerable trouble, especially the Dark Continent. The danger there is much higher than in the human world. The second game begins. Gon sat in the corner, feeling as though he had done something wrong. However, he believes that what he insists on is correct. Emotions are conflicting. Scene 2. Burns. Richard. Richard looked at Pence opposite. In a safe way, I admit defeat so that you can be sure to pass the exam, and in the next battle, I can win a victory no matter what. I surrender. Richard raised his hand. This was expected by everyone. With Peng Si's strength, none of the candidates present was worse than Peng Si, except for Liurio and Gon. But Gon has won, and Liurio and Peng Si did not meet for a short time. The winner, Pence. The referee looked down. The third scene, Hisoka, Kurapika. Liurio looked at Kurapika worriedly. In the fourth test, the ally that Liurio found was Kurapika. Without Kurapika, Liurio could not pass the fourth test. Liurio thanks Kurapika and Hisoka. That is the existence that almost all students are afraid of. However, Liurio was worried. Hisoka conceded. Once you play, you concede defeat. Only whispered next to Karapika, almost exactly the same as Richard conceded. Karika, what did Hisoka tell you? Karapika shook her head. Nothing. Karapika came to the corner, lowered her head, seemed to be thinking about something, and couldn't help but look towards Hisoka. The finals turned out to be very ugly. It can even be considered ugly. In all 3 games, the obviously stronger side conceded defeat. This is the result of the rules set by Netero. The 4th match, Hanzo versus Kure. Hanzo wins. Hisoka versus Bakure. Hisoka wins. There are a few things to see in these 2 games. But basically, Hanzo versus Kure was the climax of this final. The remaining people are Bakure, Richard, Leorio, Killua, and Gitaracker. And at this time, Leorio put forward a suggestion to let Bakure rest, because Bakure has already played 2 games in a row. Rinley is not strong, but he doesn't want to fight unfairly. Richard, Gitaracker, stepped into the ring first. Chapter 61, long time no see. Richard knew that Gitaracker was an IL fan. In addition to Richard, Hisoka also knew, but Killua didn't know. Part of the reason for IL's fans to take the Hunter exam this time is precisely because of Killua. Killua, who just ran away from home, is impossible for the Zoldyck family to say that they are not worried at all. Moreover, Ilmi is also a strong brother-in-law. When Richard and Gitaracker stood in the ring, the atmosphere in the entire hall changed. Because Richard and Gitaracker are recognized by all candidates, one of the strongest 3 in this Hunter exam. The other is Hisoka. Hisoka watched with equal interest. Both of them were Hisoka's targets. The only expression that didn't change was Netero. Haven't started yet. The momentum of the 2 had already begun to collide. I don't think we need to fight. It doesn't matter who wins, the result is the same. Gitaracker glanced at Killua next to him. Really? Then, let me admit defeat. Gitaracker raised his hand. Hisoka looked disappointed. Both of them are his targets. If Richard and IL fans fight, Hisoka will be very happy and excited. Of course, this is in the case of life and death between the 2. If life and death were to be divided, Hisoka hoped that the man in the battle would be him. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. But at the same time, like Hisoka, I was a little disappointed. But Netero set this rule, and it will lead to this result. The real powerhouse will have some estimates of his own strength and the strength of his opponents. Since there are 10 people, only 1 cannot pass. Well, just find that person. In most minds, there's an answer. Leorio, Burst Library. These 2 people are relatively weak among those who have not yet passed the assessment. Ilmi is a little different. Ilfin doesn't want Killua to follow the hunter's path. IL fans hope that Killua can become a traditional killer. Follow the tradition of the Zoldyck family. I guess before that, Killua is a junior trained by Netero and Maha. But this matter, ER fans may not know about it, so ER fans' ideas must be their own ideas. However, there's also a possibility that Ilmi knew about this plan. What Ilmi is doing now is a test of Killua, an arrangement to promote Killua's growth. Richard stepped off the ring. Richard, that's great. Pensy hurried up to meet him. It's just what was expected. Richard waved his hand and brought Peng Si to the position against the wall. Next to it is Hisoka. Karapika is comforting Gon. Gon's expression softened a little, but still a little worried about what happened just now. Karika, did I do something wrong? Hearing this voice, Richard couldn't help but glance. Because of his appearance, the final list of Hunter's exam has changed. Hanzo didn't entangle with Gon for too long, and he didn't knock Gon out. Therefore, many things have changed. Gon didn't get hurt and was sent to the lounge, but stayed here. Richard didn't expect Gon to say such a thing at this time. A bit of surprise. You will regret it, and you will progress. Karapika was silent for a while and comforted. It's all here, and no one wants to admit defeat. No one wants to throw in the towel, and that must be true. But if you lose, you have to admit it. Richard recalled that in the original book, after Gon won in this way, he seemed to feel that his win was not very honorable at first, and refused to accept the hunter license. Only was persuaded by Sats. Third to last, Gitaracker, Killua. Killua did not recognize Gitaracker's identity, nor did he know of Nun's existence. Therefore, Killua is confident in herself. Don't even feel like I'm under Hisoka, Richard Gitaracker. Step by step, walk towards Gitaracker. And at this time, Gitaracker pulled the needle from his face. Ilmi used these needles to change her appearance. Such a method was also used by Yirmi in the Ukexin incident. Disguised as Hisoka, Hisoka can find a chance to be alone with Crawlo, and then have showdown with Crawlo. But because Crawlo's thoughts were sealed, Hisoka's battle plan ended in failure. Until Crawlo wanted to seek revenge for Hisoka because of Yu Kursen's affairs, so he agreed to Hisoka. After solving the seal on Yin in his body, the two fought in the Sky Arena. Phantom Troop, vengeance will come. What Hisoka did to Phantom Troop is inexcusable. Of course, this revenge is also divided. Silva killed the 8th member of the Phantom Troop. For this reason, Crawlo and Silva had a fight. But there is no follow-up. Because the other party was the Zoldyck family, Phantom Troop stopped his continued revenge. Otherwise, the group waiting for the Phantom Troop may be destroyed. Maha Zoldyck shot, and no one in the brigade could stop him. A familiar breath emanated from the person on the opposite side, and Killua froze suddenly. The appearance of the Gitaracker changes at a rate visible to the naked eye. Big brother. Killua's pupils shrank. Killua, long time no see. Long time no see, big brother. Killua's whole person seems to have changed. Chapter 62 maybe. This is the Killer family. I heard from my mother that you ran away from home and slashed her, for which she shed tears. Mother, she is very touched. The young son is finally grown up, very pleased. Mother is worried about you, so she entrusted me to see you. I didn't expect you to come and take the hunter exam. It just so happens that I need a hunter license for my next mission. Killua, then what's your reason for taking the hunter exam? Killua bowed her head. I'm just bored to have a look. I'm not interested in becoming a hunter. Well, that's great. Ilmi said, since that's the case, then I'll say it straight. You are not suitable to be a hunter. You're the son of the Zoldyck family. You are only suitable to be a killer. This is your destiny. You understand this, right? Clear. You don't need feelings. You're just a puppet walking in the dark. Only the death of life can bring you meaning. This is the value of your life in the future. You understand this, right? Killua was silent for a long time, her eyes involuntarily looking in Gon's direction. She gritted her teeth. Can I have anything else besides this? Cannot. But I want... What do you want? Friend. I want to be friends with Gon, Killua said. Friend. Ilmi looked at Gon in the corner and said, the killer doesn't need friends. It's superfluous and will only become a burden for the killer. If you insist, then I will kill him. A burst of killing intent was released from Ilmi's body. Extend to the corner of Gon. Hisoka's eyes narrowed slightly, and he moved calmly. Richard looked at Gon. The strong killing intent and malicious thoughts were in it. If it was replaced by other people, it would have been unbearable, but Gon was different. Gon would not measure the gap between himself and his opponent. Even in the face of Neferpitou, Gon chose to face it, not run away. Back then, Neferpitou could kill Gon with one blow. At this moment, in the face of Ilmi, Gon did not back down, looking directly at Ilmi, although Gon's body was already shaking involuntarily. Next to Leorio, Kurapika looked extremely wary, and Hanzo, Bakur, and Peng Si were also affected by this maliciousness. People who don't know none, when faced with this kind of malicious thoughts, are like the whole person, red fruit, in the ice cellar, cold, dark, terrifying, and irresistible. Richard put his hand on Pence's shoulder. Thanks. Peng Si's face returned to normal. Richard looked at Killua. The current situation and the original plot have changed a lot. So what's next? Ilmi glanced back at Killua. However, now I give you two options. The first one, admit that I don't have friends and that I won't make friends in the future, and admit defeat, then I won't kill Gon, whether it's now or after the exam. Second, fight with me. As long as you win me, then I will not care about your business. And if you lose, then I will kill Gon immediately. Two choices. Which one do you choose? Leorio forcibly calmed down. Is this guy crazy? Is he really Killua's brother? Why do you do this to your own brother? I just wanted to say, Killua's entire family is not normal, right? Why did Killua cut his mother? and her mother was moved. What kind of magical idea? Karapika looked serious. Maybe this is the killer family. Killua fell silent. A long time. Finally, Killua made a decision. I surrender. Ilmi smiled and said, yes, this is the right choice. You will not be my opponent, a killer. If you can't make a clear judgment on the strength of the enemy, you will be remiss. Also, killers don't need friends. When Ilmi said this, Richard couldn't help but look at Hisoka. In fact, Hisoka and Ilmi are totally friends. This sentence, said by Er Fawn, is very double standard. It's been a long time since you've been out. Come home and take a look. Mother, she misses you very much. Yes. The referee announced the result. The winner, Illinois fan. Next game, Leorio against Kira. Leorio and Bakuer walked to the ring. Leorio, you are not my opponent. Among the people present, only you and Peng Si are the weakest, but Peng Si has already passed the test, so the one who failed the test must be you. Bakuer is very confident in this competition, because Leorio's strength is indeed worse than other candidates. In the first exam, Leorio barely passed. Compared to others, Leorio's foundation is a lot worse. Although Leorio's progress is fast. But the foundation is here. No matter how fast Leorio progresses, he can't make great strides in a day. Moreover, almost all the candidates who can reach the finals can be regarded as geniuses. Leorio's talent is good, but the talent of other candidates is not too bad. Among the 10 people this time, there's no old, stagnant existence like Bald Low. Leorio snorted coldly. Don't talk so early, I too came over one test at a time. I'm not as weak as I thought. Bring it on. Whoever loses and who wins. It's up to the real ability to decide. But at this moment, Killua's figure suddenly appeared behind Bakuer. Richard looked at Ilmi subconsciously. Chapter 63, The Ruling on Killua. A voice sounded. Bakugu's eyes suddenly widened. The same goes for Leorio on the opposite side. Killua withdrew his hand, which was full of blood. A gloomy aura wrapped around Killua's body. Killua walked to the door. Push away. Step out. Killua, gone subconsciously, wanted to catch up, but was stopped by the staff. Killua has been disqualified. And you, there are still further steps to complete. Otherwise, you will not be able to really get the hunter license. Please go back inside. This Gon struggled. At this moment, Leorio's voice suddenly sounded. Come on, someone, help me. Save people. All eyes were on Leorio. Leorio took out his briefcase. There are no files in it, but medical drugs and appliances. Karapika, Hanzo, hurried forward. No. Leorio was sweating profusely. The injury was so bad, there was so much blood loss. The heart is bruised. Broken blood vessels. Leorio looked up. Are there any people who can do medical treatment? Richard thinks that Bakuer is pitiful. This person is neither good nor bad, just normal. But whether it is the original or now, the results are not good. In the original book, it became food for ants. Neferpitu got the concept of none from Bakuer's brain. And now, Bakuer has suffered the fate of Bald Low. But better than Bald Low, Bakuer didn't die right away. Compared to Bald Low, Bakuer is a young man after all, and his vitality is stronger. In addition, the strength of Bakuer is a little stronger than that of Baudrillard. That's it. Richard stepped forward. Let me do it. Hanzo and Karapika move out of the way. Richard came across from Leorio. After that, look at the explosion library. Killua's hand, aimed at Bakuer's heart, pierced from behind. However, I don't know why, there's a little deviation. Did not hit the heart, but the one next to it was badly damaged. A blood vessel was directly ruptured. Richard stretched out his hand and covered Bakuer's wound. A mass of air condensed in Richard's hands. Richard used his own ki to change into the shape of a membrane, acting as a blood vessel. Leorio, do the surgery to connect the blood vessels. Yes, Leorio didn't know how Richard did it. At this time, Leorio was not in the mood to pay attention to this either. All the energy is concentrated on repairing the organs of the explosion. Time passed little by little. Tick. Leorio's sweat dripped onto the floor, and there was already a pool. Richard glanced at Leorio. If you're forming a team, it's actually quite good to bring a Leorio. Leorio's personality may be a little rough, but he will be very serious and meticulous when dealing with things that need to be serious. Also, there are not many Nun with healing abilities. The character is much better than Gon and Killua. Gon is sometimes too self-willed, even blindly confident, and Killua's words, "Until the problem of the Needle of Ilmi is solved, Killua will be too stable, and he is too disrespectful to life." To put it simply, one is too reckless and the other is too wretched. If the personalities of the two are combined, it will look a lot more normal. However, that's probably why the two became good friends. Character flaws complement each other. Richard looked at Kurapika again, but Richard just flashed the idea and quickly gave up. The route Kurapika took was doomed, not suitable for a role in a team. Kurapika's none for spiders. Even if Kurapika considered other possibilities, he left himself a way out. But after all, compared to others, there will be certain shortcomings. Also, Kurapika has his own things to do, and Richard has his own things to do. A team, once there are two main lines, then there will be contradictions. In the case of Hanzo, it depends on what kind of abilities he develops in the future. Finally, Leorio stopped and leaned back, lying on the ground, panting heavily. Finally finished. Richard looked at Baku. All wounds have been sutured. However, Bakur was still in a coma. Bakugu was seriously injured. Lose too much blood. Everything Leorio can do has already been done. But whether Bakur can recover or not depends on the will of God. And Burst Cure's own will to survive. Several workers stepped forward and moved Bakur to a nearby room. "We have contacted the hospital, and people from the hospital will pick up Cure soon," a staff member said. "Hunter exam. At this point, it is over. Congratulations to the 8 of you for passing the Hunter exam. Richard, Hisoka, Pinsy, Ilmi, Hanzo Gon, Leorio, Kurapika. Please follow me to the next conference room. We introduce Hunter's responsibilities and rights. Please." A group of 8 people walked towards the conference room, one after another. A question was thrown out, namely whether Killua should really be disqualified. Killua shot Bakur, but Killua wasn't in the right state at the time, and Bakur didn't really die. This is the view of Leorio, Kurapika Gon. Another point of view is, I can't tell if Killua is under the control of Ilmi, and Killua shot Bakur with the idea of wanting to kill Bakur. Now Bakur is not dead. It's just Bakur's luck, and Leorio's rescue is timely. It's nothing to do with Killua. The purpose of Killua itself is clear, that is to kill. If you kill someone, you should be disqualified. Chapter 64, the third scent, the Hunter exam, is finally over. Richard walked out of the castle. A card appeared in Richard's hand. Exactly the Hunter license. With this thing, more than 90% of the countries in the world can enter directly without going through too many complicated procedures. In many cases, murder can also be exempted. IL fans take the Hunter exam, and a large part of the reason is because of this. And Hisoka, Richard doesn't know. This thing is not very important to Hisoka. Hisoka is not a murderer. There are only a few interested targets. In other words, even if it's not Hunter, but just an ordinary nun who kills, it will be difficult for the outside world to pursue it. One is that it is not easy to obtain evidence. Another is that even if you know that the person has committed a crime, it is difficult to catch. Only a few hunters will pursue fugitives. Most hunters are doing things they are interested in, and ordinary people really have nothing to do with none. Richard glanced back. The question of whether Killua should be disqualified is up to Netero to make the final decision. Uphold the previous judgment of the Hunter Association. That is, Killua was disqualified for this test because of the attack on Cure. Richard, where are we going now? Penn stood next to Richard. Go to a nearby city first and take a rest. The figures of the two gradually disappeared from the range of the castle. The students left one after another. Hisoka is back in the Sky Arena. Hanzo also returned to the place where he practiced. Ilmi goes on her next mission. Bakur is lying in the hospital. As for when he can wake up, and whether he can wake up, it will be a problem. The Hunter Association is responsible for the medical expenses of the explosion. But that's not because the Hunter Association is responsible for it. By taking the Hunter exam, it has been determined that death is possible. Hunter Association do not need to be responsible. The reason why the Hunter Association treats Bakur is more because Bakur has this value. It can be seen from Netero's judgment on Bakur. Possibly, Bakur can't become a strong man, but as an ordinary hunter, he is qualified. Don't think it's nothing. For this world, the ordinary hunter is already the existence at the top of the pyramid. After all, the world's gangsters, the 10 old men, rely on the elites, but only mere beasts. Gon, Leorio, Karapika are on their way to the Zoldyck family. Gon wants to take Killua out of the Zoldyck family. Richard estimates that it will be almost the same as the original plot. Richard and Pince arrive at the hotel. Get a suite. Okay, just a second. Soon, the lady at the front desk handed over a key card. Your room number is on the key card. Thanks. The two took the elevator and went upstairs. Enter the room. The entire Hunter exam lasted a long time. From the beginning to the first test center city, it takes almost 2 months. But the gains are also huge. Richard took out the Hunter license. The first thing is to get a Hunter license. With this thing, it will be convenient to do a lot of things. But it's just incidental. What I really want is Nun's high-level skills. Richard took out another note with a number on it. A senior hunter's number, given by Netero. You want to learn the advanced skills of Nun, just make this call. This was Netero's original words at the time. I don't know who the owner of this number will be. Richard's first thought was Biscuit. Not the 12 Hunter Association, but Biscuit's strength is not weak, even strong. One punch was one of the 3 to defeat the exploding demon. Moreover, Biscuit is an orthodox learner at heart. Gon and Killua's future Nun high-level skills are taught by Biscuit. Gon and Killua's Nun initiation teacher, Yungu, was a disciple of Biscuit. Richard took out his mobile phone and dialed the number above. But there was a busy tone. No one picks up. Richard frowned. Isn't Netero giving the wrong number? However, it may also be that the other party is busy. Richard put down the note. Pince probed in from the outside. Richard, do you want to take a shower? You wash first. Okay. This suite has 2 rooms, but only 1 bathroom. Richard sat cross-legged on the ground, closed his eyes, and began to meditate for spiritual practice. In terms of physical training, Richard has reached a relatively high level. Basically, the period of rapid improvement has passed. A single day's effort doesn't matter. Day after day, perseverance to see results. 1 hour a day and 2 hours of practice a day, the effect is not much different. Therefore, Richard devoted most of his time to spiritual practice.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.